So
Will's busy. I thought for a second that Will
I'm
was going to
always
chime
paying
in.
attention. You're the two. You're supposed to go first.
I thought
age before beauty.
I thought you were getting ready to say something, so I laid out. I was like, is Will jumping in? And then he looked like he was working a turntable over there. So yeah, it's good to be back. Big holiday weekend. President's Day, which I never can remember if we actually have the day off or not.
I also forgot about that, and it was a pleasant surprise last week when I figured it out.
Yeah, I'm never quite sure what days we do or don't have off because
it's odd, especially because we're sports people. So sometimes stuff that is typically maybe around a sport, or where there are sports being played, we're like, well, we have to be on that day.
And then I have to ask, does everyone get President's Day off? Is that
my wife didn't?
So she had to work.
She had to work, yeah.
Veterans Day, is that again? I never know. I'm always confused. I know we get everyone gets Christmas Eve and Thanksgiving, and outside of that, I don't know. It's like Lincoln's birthday, Martin Luther King's birthday. I don't know. There's there's a million random holidays, and I'm like, do we have that off? President's Day?
Yeah, it's it is tough to keep up with occasionally, especially as I mentioned, my wife did have to work. You'll like this, and it pertains to you because I believe you're going to this land soon. My wife's company is based in Louisiana, and they do not get President's Day off, but they do get Mardi Gras off.
Really?
Yeah,
because Mardi Gras is going on. I think it just happened. Yeah, it's happening right now because I'm going to New Orleans on Friday. Right. I think we miss it by a week.
Yeah,
because the last couple years we've gone the week after because Mardi Gras can be it can be a lot. If you're,
I have not done it, but I've heard from others.
Yeah, so if you go the week after, you get kind of you get the tail end of it, and it's because my gal has to be down there for business. So anytime she goes down to New Orleans for business, we're like, well, I might as well come along. Yeah,
yep.
If she's in Baltimore
Smart
right now,
line.
guess who's not going to Baltimore? This guy. And then she's to Houston. Nah, Louisiana. Why don't I catch the tail end of that? But their company always does the week after when they have to go down there because if you go down for business and you do it during Mardi Gras,
you're not getting anything done.
Buckle up.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's the worst idea in the world. We got a business trip. Let's go during Mardi Gras and see what happens.
Well, and I've heard it's kind of like going to the beach on spring break when it's everybody's down there anyways. It's hard to actually enjoy the place that you're at. And New Orleans is an awesome place to be at when it's maybe not like that.
New Orleans is one of my favorite cities. And,
Same.
And New Orleans is always one of those where you either love it or you hate it. There's not a lot of middle ground. It's one of the unique vibes that you'll get from any city in the United States. Mm-hmm. And there's really there's no wishy-washy. Either immediately you will be like, this place, the culture, the vibe, the music, it'll hit you. Or you'll go and you'll be like, it smells like a toilet. Because it's below sea level. There are a lot of rats.
Yep. You're in the bayou.
You're in the bayou, and it's hot and it's sticky, and it just won't be for you. But if you go during Mardi Gras, and I've done New Year's on Beale Street, it's in Memphis. Obviously, I've been to Vegas during big events. Lots of different entertainment districts. I've never seen anything quite like Mardi Gras New Orleans. Maybe, and I haven't been, but I guess maybe Times Square New Year's in New York might be one of those, because you hear people just wear diapers because you can't leave. There's no bathroom and you're there, and so it's people are literally dropping trowel right where they're at and wearing diapers. Mardi Gras is like that. It's fun.
Oktoberfest.
Yeah, it's fun to do once, but
if you're trying to experience that place, that's not probably the best way to do it. Even though that's a way to do it, and it can be a lot of fun.
Yes, I would just say, if you're going to be hey, let's dip our toe into New Orleans and see, don't go during Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
Go once or twice before, see if you like it. Then if you like it, then go back and experience Mardi Gras and give it a whirl.
Well, we will talk some sports today, but not just yet. The first thing I had in my notes was Big Souk, victory or Valhalla, and I got to find out, because we kind of went over this a little bit at the end of Friday's show. But you were in a little bit of a wrestling tournament over the weekend, not exactly wrestling, but I wanted to hear how this went.
Yeah, we swept it. So I don't compete very often. I'm old and I don't want to get hurt. And I'm not I started it just as kind of a hobby, but the gym I go to, Brazilian Top Team in jiu-jitsu, most of those guys are big time competitors. So they were putting on kind of an event they called the Battle of the Giants, a bunch of the ultra heavyweights. So my coach was like, yeah, I want you to do it. So I figured if you're going to do it, win the whole damn thing. So breeze through it. So
well, and you told me on Friday that, like, listen, I'm going to be older than most of these guys, so I'm going in guns ablaze. I'm going fast. It's victory of Valhalla. I'm going to either win fast or I'm going to lose fast. And
that was, yeah.
And that's how it went?
Most of the guys there were like, were young. They were in their 20s and 30s. So I figured, you know, being the old man at almost 46, like time
Not
is
washed yet.
Time is not on my side. So I figured if we're gonna go in, we win guns a blazes. I finished one in 18 seconds.
Beautiful.
So we had an 18-second match, and we ripped a couple arms, and it was good. And then I got the world's smallest trophy.
Did you get to keep the arm as a trophy?
I felt bad on that one, but because it was called the Battle of the Giants, and then they gave me the world's smallest trophy, which was kind of a fun little thing.
I love it.
So it was neat. I don't, like I said, I don't get to do that very often. I just do it kind of as a hobby, and I like to I like the skill. My goal is again to get my black belt when I turn 50. That's kind of what I set out. But every now and then,
how far away are we?
Hopefully we'll get there. Again, I got 4 years to get there, so we're about halfway there, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, every now and then you get a wild hair, and as an old man, you decide to go out and be competitive. And figure if you're going to be competitive, I told everyone is that if I'm going to do it, I'm not coming to lose. So luckily, we didn't lose.
I love it. I love that mentality. Now, Will Ortner's over there. Will, how old will Suk have to be before you could beat him?
Before I could beat him?
Yeah.
I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's how many surgeries does he have to have before I beat him?
You need him on the mend a couple more times?
Well, I've never, like, there's no wrestling background. There's no boxing background. My background is, like, I'm bigger than most people, and I played football. That's about it. So Suk still got some stuff that he knows that I would easily fall for, and I know to wait.
Oh,
I'm patient.
Just give it time. My old and decrepitness.
I'm patient.
It's not there yet.
It's already outthinking you.
It feels good when you can go in against people that are 20 years younger than you, and you can still, again, you got to represent for the old men. You got to go in there and push the sun up in the sky.
Was everybody younger than you? All the guys that you beat?
Yeah, it's there was a lot of youth. I had kids. My kids were the ages of some of them. And that's like Will's, like, what, you're 26?
I'm 26.
Yeah, I got a daughter that's 27. So again, you got to represent for the old men.
But so you said they also sold tickets for this thing and it sold out. Like, how many people are you fighting in front of?
I don't know. I mean, it was at our gym. So, I mean, it was
a couple hundred or something like that.
It was a lot. No, I want to say it was like maybe like 175.
Okay.
So it was weird. They did a whole thing. They like streamed it on YouTube.
And do you get like intro music? Do you get announced? Like how, like,
yeah, they had a whole thing. They did it was a whole big production. Like they streamed it on YouTube and like everyone had like walkout music. So it was a little weird.
What was your walkout music?
I didn't pick anything.
You didn't go with Enter Sandman? That seems like right up your alley.
You one of your Viking songs that you have?
I didn't pick anything. It was just kind of one of those where I was like, like I'm not doing walkout music. And,
so you Mike Tyson'd it.
So I didn't choose anything, and then they were introducing me first. They introduced all the competitors, and the moment they did it, because occasionally it does happen. So I work out at that gym sometimes before class. And so I'll go in by myself and they just give me a key and I'll go in there and sometimes I get caught. So if it's just me in the gym, I do tend to listen to like Viking death metal sometimes, and I turn it up a bit. And then every now and then I get caught. Like I try to turn it off before other people come in because it's kind of silly, right? Like I fully own.
But it gets you in your like it's in your space kind of.
Yes, but I fully admit
it's not everyone's thing.
It's a little silly. I understand it's silly, and so when they were introducing people, they all of a sudden like the music started playing, and it was like this Viking death metal song by like Peyton Parrish. This guy I listened to, and I just started laughing. I go, I guess I'm up first. And I was like,
that must be me.
Yeah. So they did like a Valhalla calling. And I was
That's my favorite song. That's his best one.
So I was like, yeah.
I listen to that when I work out too.
So there you go.
Well, when I walked in today, there was a meeting of the minds happening, and I don't know what conversation I walked into, but it was Ortner. It was digital promo guy Jake, and it was engineer Joey, and I believe they're talking about the gambling games with the best odds, and they were working their way through Baccarat. Can you fill me in here, Will? What kind of scheme do we have going on?
Well, it started with Dusty not being able to print anything, and he was talking about it was a gamble every time that he tried to do that. And then it turned into some Vegas conversations, and we were trying to figure out the best ways to earn some cheap money.
Earn some cheap money.
I've always heard that craps is the best odds in Vegas.
I think it's baccarat.
Is it?
Because it's close to 50-50 as you can get, because you're betting, you either bet the banker or you bet the player.
So I think that you can both be right here, because I think that just from a kind of a heads up standpoint that baccarat might have the best odds, but I think that you can, the way that craps rewards odds on like points and things like that, when you back up your bet, you can stand to make more that way, or the house is more exposed that way.
I've never played baccarat.
Neither have I. It seems
I don't have enough money.
It kind of is terrifying. I feel like that's one of those things that like James Bond plays or whatever.
It feels like a fancy villain game.
Yeah, like every now and then I got a taste for that, like Pai Gow every now, like, because I will. Like the card tables will get me a little bit, so I'll play some Pai Gow.
I love Pai Gow when I'm down, because you just push with the dealer all the time. So it's just the drinks are flowing and you're preserving your losses a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll play around, but I'm usually a craps guy. I'll play a little roulette. I can play a little blackjack, but if I'm, and that's the thing about craps, is I feel like you can bleed for a long time. Like if you can play for several hours and not lose.
It can take a while for the dice to get around the horn. If it gets really cold, it's rough. But I end up hating blackjack because, one, I don't think the odds are that good. The fact that you have to play before the dealer does, and then additionally, they go so quick. If you start off on a cold streak, you lose your money fast. And I want to hang out. So craps, Pai Gow, they allow that to happen.
Yeah.
You could do the Dana White method, which is you say how much you want to win, and then you just double down and double down and double down and double down until eventually you win or you run out of money.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
Yep.
In Provo, you're a couple hours away from the Nevada border. Wendover it's right on the Utah-Nevada border. So a lot of people would drive, and God, if I remember, I would say maybe hour and 45, 2 hours if I remember correctly. It's been so long because again, I'm old. But we'd have people that would drive to Wendover, and I knew a guy, and that was his whole deal. And it's a sound strategy. You just have to have a bankroll.
Yeah.
Whatever you're going to bet. So if you bet you like $500, right? You bet $500. If you lose, the next one you got to bet 1,000. You lose that, then you got to bet 2. And as long as you keep doubling, you just need to win once, and then you're back to even, and then you go back to your original bet. Problem is, especially if you're playing a decent chunk of money, you lose 5-6 hands in a row. You're down some serious coin. But if you have the bankroll, and he swore by it, he was a good player, and he would usually come back, and he was never rich, but he'd come back from these trips. He'd come back with $3-4 grand.
If the well's deep enough, you can basically decide what you want to get to before you go home. The only thing that is a threat to you is catching a real cold streak and not having a deep enough well.
And I got another buddy of mine that his strategy to this day, he just, whatever he's going to spend, let's say he wants to $1,000. He's going to a casino. He's like down in Vegas. He got $1,000. He'll just play one hand of blackjack or one hand of roulette. And his whole thing is, I got a better chance of winning, or it's like the longer you play, the odds are not in your favor. So it's kind of fun. Well, you're walking through and he'll be like, this one, and he'll just go through and he'll lay a couple $100 down, and it's like, well, it's one spin. And the best is like he'll win it, and then like he wanders off, and then like on the way back he'll be like, all right, and then he goes into like the high end blackjack, and he lays everything down on that hand, and sometimes he'll win like 2 or 3 times. Like, dude, walk away, and he can't. Like he'll be walking by, and the juice, like the action will get him, and he's like, what the hell? And he just he throws it down. And his thing is, I was prepared to lose that money. And he just that's his whole strategy is
terrifying.
Just
little impulse plays, and then
lay it all there.
As long as you can back it up, I love it.
Yep.
Well, we will talk some sports today. It's despite being past football season, it feels like there's quite a bit to get to, especially in the college realm. But the first thing I want to get to is NBA All-Star Weekend. Everyone has been kicking this one around today. I didn't watch very much of it, and I think that's part of the point. We will get to that coming up next. You're listening to Primetime on 1080 The Fan. So hopefully his luck is up. I did text with him on Saturday because he convinced me to take the Jayhawks, and we sweat that one out, but we cashed, so that's good. What we want to get to today for today's AAA heating and cooling poll question is about the NBA All-Star Game, and it's as simple as this. What should we do with the All-Star Game? Leave it, it's fine. Change the format, increase the incentive, or cancel it entirely.
I don't know, and I get why everyone's pissed, right? You know, it's 972 to 934. Like, I understand. Like, there's no defense played, but we do this all the time.
We do this every year with this game.
We do it every year with this game. We do it with the Pro Bowl. It still gets 6 million people that watch it.
But the Pro Bowl's gone now. They abandoned it.
They abandoned it.
Should they do that here?
And they did. This one, the NBA All-Star Game, actually drew better than the Pro Bowl games.
Mm-hmm.
And normally the Pro Bowl game did better than the Pro Bowl games when they actually did the actual game.
Right.
That would get like 8 million people. The games where they just did like the sand football and all that, I think it got like 5.4. The NBA All-Star Game did 5.7. I don't understand why we have to make this something other than just a weekend event. Like it makes money. People want to be a part of it. It sells out, right? People want to host it. I don't see any city not wanting to have the All-Star Game. We'd love to have it here in Portland. We can't have it.
Yep.
But everywhere it goes, it ends up being a big deal. All the celebrities go there. It's a big party. The guys don't give a damn about it. And if you want to watch it, cool. But like I hear Stephen A. and and then these guys that come on, JJ Redick and Kendrick Perkins, and they're like, this is an abomination. Then don't watch it. Like I don't understand why we continue to try to make All-Star games into something that they're not. And then we're going to be like, whoa, well, back in the day. Cool. The worst argument you can make for anything is one of two things. Either that's the way we've always done it, or it used to be this way. Well, cool. In 1974, guys didn't make any money and guys didn't care. And I'm sure the 10 grand that they got for it in the All-Star Game was a big deal.
Yeah.
But now guys are making $54 million a year, right? They're used to certain luxuries. And yeah, I get it. They're soft and they're a bunch of candy asses. Sure, you can call them all that. But none of that is going to make Giannis decide to go out and play defense. And like, oh, we'll make it $1 million. You think that's going to get those guys to go out and play? It's not. We try all these different things to try to get some juice into this. For Major League Baseball, we tried to make it count for the World Series. Yeah. Like, there's only so much. And even during that,
it didn't work.
It didn't work because at the end of the day, you're still putting everyone in. You're not putting your best lineups
exactly.
in.
It was still an exhibition, and I actually hoped as a baseball fan, I thought it would be cool if you really played your best 9 and you threw out your best starting pitcher, and everyone played it that way, but they didn't. They treated it as the same exhibition, and then it had stakes on it that in a game that people didn't care.
Yeah, Pete Rose plowing over, I forget who it was.
Ray Fosse. Ended his career, basically.
That ain't happening.
No
one's getting Buster Posey'd in the All-Star game, and I can't blame them for that. So unless you're going to put a gun to someone's head and say you have to play defense, good luck. So I don't know why we have to do we'll just cancel it then. Why? It's an event. I did not watch a ton of it. And like the NHL All-Star Game is probably an NHL All-Star Game I like, and the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, I usually watch parts of that.
Sure.
I would say baseball I watch more, but I like the hockey skills competition. But we had one of the best players in the NHL this year, Kucherov. He was playing in the skills competition.
I saw this.
I promise you, look that up on YouTube. You will never, and that dude is one of the 4 or 5 best hockey players in the world. You will never see someone give less of an effort than what he put out there.
One of the events he was doing was like a timed speed skating event, and he was going for a Sunday stroll.
And, and so the guy looked like a jackass. But then again, I have to listen to we should just cancel the event. Why? It was, the dude looked like an idiot. Let him look like an idiot. He didn't care. I still ended up watching. So the only downside to this is, again, people don't necessarily care. It's not getting huge numbers, but until it starts losing money and until people don't want to go and players choose to not attend it, then I just don't know what we're doing here besides pearl clutching and saying it used to be so much better.
So for me, I think that what people want is, and I get that it's easy to just harken back on, well, we liked it better the way it was before, but this year especially, and I didn't watch a second of it live. I watched plenty of highlights or lowlights of it afterwards, but like it was more that like I've never seen anyone care less. And I think they just want it to be, people want to see the Stars try and be competitive. And even NBA Saturday night, like the All-Star Saturday night with like the 3-point contest, like dudes want to win that. Like dudes care about winning that.
Yeah.
But that, like, Luka was chucking up 3/4 court shots and in regulation, and people are just doing it. I mean, it was like a bad Harlem Globetrotters exhibition. And you know what? I didn't watch because I knew it was going to be that way. And that's fine. But for the people who want it to be competitive, is there anything that could incentivize players to do it differently, or that you could put out there that would make it better?
If you put up a Squid Game sort of, if you put, I don't know,
consequences for losing.
Losing team votes one player to the Pistons.
Well, I did hear one.
There you go, I like that.
I heard one suggestion that losing team has their DMs leaked from from their social media.
If you put up a Squid Game like that ball of cash, but I mean, God, you'd have to put up, because how many guys on a row? They putting like 12, 13 guys?
15, yeah.
So, dude, you got to put up like $50 million. If you put up a big globe of cash at $50 million, and at the end of it dropped, and like you just got to scoop, maybe, but.
I was wondering, because I think the defense is a big problem. Like, any dude is going to be willing to try and take over and like score points, but no one's stopping anybody.
Well, I mean, the only thing I can equate this, because I played in an all-state game, but again, like that's different. The only thing I can equate this to in my whatever pathetic athletic career that I had was maybe spring games. And I'll tell you, the first 2 spring games that I played in, those mattered to me, because I was trying to my freshman year and my redshirt freshman year, I was trying to, like, hey, I can do this. Trust me, by the time I got to my 3rd year and I was a starter, guess who didn't give 2 flying Fs about the spring game? This guy. You couldn't, there's nothing you could do. Nothing, because you couldn't pay me. But I mean, that you can't pay the NBA guys. Damian Lillard's making what, $54 million and another $250 from Adidas? LeBron James worth $1 billion. You think, I mean, for God's sakes, what are you going to do to incentivize LeBron?
Right.
Good luck with that. And that was me. Like, there's nothing you could have given me when I was getting ready to play those spring games. And I mean nothing.
Because you can't identify with people in that position.
That's
like, the common man's like, well, put $1 million on the table. It doesn't work like that for them.
No, it's like, you think about anything where you haven't been motivated to do it. Like, that happens to me all the time. Like if we're out at a bar and someone's like, this does happen. People like, people like want to arm wrestling me. And I'm like, no. Why not? Because I don't want to. I don't want to get hurt. This is stupid. And there's nothing you can do that's going to make. So when you're in a position of power, why would you ever do that? I mean, I wish it was different. I wish that guys cared. But how on earth are you going to motivate those guys? So accept it for what it is. And it's a weekend where the guys get to hang out. A bunch of celebrities get to go there. They probably sleep with a couple groupies and some Instagram hots. Try to get with Megan Fox or whatever, Ice Spice or whatever celebrity is milling around there. Whatever you're looking for. And you get to rub shoulders. You get to have a party. And that's what the All-Star game has turned into. And sometimes things just change. So if you want to cancel it, fine. But why would you cancel it how much money do you think with every sponsor? Because when you do tune in, that thing is just one big advertisement. You don't think they make money off of that? You don't think that they love having 6 million people tune into it? So as long as it makes money and people still show up, I don't know it's not going anywhere. No.
Well, I also think the necessity for the players to try is gone, because back in the day, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but in the 70s and 80s, how many games were nationally televised that you actually got to play in, right?
True.
The All-Star game,
exposure.
Yes,
it was a big exposure thing. And if you played hard and you did well, and you did well in the dunk contest, it's the same reason why no one's doing the dunk contest anymore. It's because you don't have to do that, because you can go on NBA League Pass and I can watch whatever game I want to. If I'm a diehard Boston Celtics fan and I'm in Portland, I can watch every Boston Celtics game, and I can watch every Boston Celtics game from their home network. So I think a lot of players look at this and go, there's no real upside for me. There was upside back in the day, because this was the way to get your name on the map. This was how you got the conversation.
I heard that from baseball guys a lot. Like, if you listen to the old guys that said, for most people, this was the only time, especially if you played in a small market, it's the only time anyone on a national stage was going to get to see you play. And it's not the case. Again, there's a lot of small market guys that are huge. That's a great point, is that there's just,
they don't need the exposure.
They don't need the money. They don't need the exposure, and they're used to a certain level of comfort and taking care of their body that wasn't there 20, 30, certainly 40 years ago. So unless you're going to make guys find a way to get skin in the game. And I don't know how you motivate those individuals. You couldn't do it with the NFL. The NFL gave up. The NFL quit.
Yeah.
The NFL was like, man, we can't do this.
Well, and especially because of the injury aspect, like it made sense for the NFL to give that up. And certainly somebody could pop an ACL or an Achilles in this game too if they start trying harder. The risk goes up. And so,
well, people bring up like Summer League. I saw a couple of the talking heads bring up Summer League and all this and that. And the guys still try hard or harder than that.
Well, most of those guys are trying to prove themselves.
It's not in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
You know, like when KD shows up at Rucker Park and they're like, hey, he puts more effort than the All-Star game. Yeah, again, he's playing for pride. It's something away from the season, and he doesn't have to get on an airplane in 48 hours and go play in the middle of an 82-game season. Because ultimately, the only thing that matters in the NBA is winning an NBA championship or being or making an All-Star team or winning an MVP, and there's nothing that happens during that weekend where that you're going to get him. And why does the 3-point contest matter to people? Because there's no risk to it. You just go out and shoot. At a dunk contest, no one wants to look like an ass. No one wants to look like a chump. But, you know, the 3-point contest, it's like it's this little safe little bubble that exists.
Yeah.
And that's the one part of it that people get competitive about and they care.
It's kind of like the perfect competing ground because no one has to put themselves out there too much from a physical standpoint, but you could still really flex. And if you don't do well, you've still got your percentage to fall back on, and you just had an off night.
Yeah.
I think almost the bigger tragedy for the whole All-Star weekend is what has happened over time to the dunk contest, because it used to be the best dunkers were in the dunk contest. And I kind of think it started with LeBron saying, the fact that Jordan always did it or did it as many times as he did. And now you have someone who is supposed to be the next GOAT, and he's never done it once. He had all the physical skill in the world. Like, there should have been something on the table to incentivize all those guys, because I want to see Anthony Gordon out there. I want to see, and if guys are healthy at the All-Star break, and maybe everything's been done at this point, and so there's not a lot of incentive for those guys to put themselves out there and try to do something new because it could flop. But why not just flex that athleticism? I think that contest going away to me is worse than the All-Star game falling apart.
Again, how do I make someone care? Yeah, I mean, when someone answers that question, let me know, and let every corporate boss in the world know, because you'll be worth $8 gajillion. Because getting people to care about something that they don't care about might be the hardest thing in the world. And I'll look in the mirror. Dude, you try to get me to do something that I don't care about. Like, I am as bad as anyone on the planet.
Rob's this way too.
Exactly. Rob is phenomenal at this. If Isaac Rob deep down doesn't care, good luck threatening him with anything. I've seen that dude walk out of meetings and just be like, yeah, I'm not interested in this. I'm walking away. And that's where you're at. And they just think this is, you can say it's a societal problem, because I don't think it's an NBA problem. I think it's a societal thing. And you've got guys now that I just don't know how on earth you get them to get buy-in, other than that collectively deciding that they don't want to be embarrassed. But so far, good luck. It didn't work with the NFL, to where they just had to go to the little Pro Bowl game thing, whatever they're doing now.
Yeah. Well, there are plenty of ideas coming in on the Vancouver Ford text line. You can text us at 503-8646-FAN. I want to run some of these by you, because I don't know that they could make everyone care, but I think there's some ideas here. Want to get to those. Plus, something else that Adam Silver said over the weekend kind of had my ears perked up a little bit, and I want to get your thoughts on sports academies in America. We'll get to all that coming up, but first, Will with SportsCenter. Discussing the AAA heating and cooling poll question of what should we do with the All-Star game. Suk's big point here is that how do you make people care? That's a hard thing to do, but we do have a couple ideas about how you can make people care. First one, you've already kind of mentioned, but said, just put $100 million on the table.
If you did that,
and see, and I don't know that the NBA can afford to do that. I don't know that they can't afford to do that.
I would. Like, no one's putting it. And if you did $100 million, the fans would get all bitchy and moany. I've already heard
that's
from
the other
so
side
many
of
people
it.
that get pissed and are like, these guys make so much money, then they don't need more. Oh, cool. Well, I'm glad that's your opinion. We all love to tell people that have money what they should do. Jeff Bezos has enough money to do whatever the hell he wants to do, right? So I'm now supposed to tell Jeff Bezos what he should or shouldn't care about. Like, that's the same guy that's like, when The Rock, like, he started that Maui fire
That
fund.
was so awful.
That dude donated like $5 million.
Not him starting the Maui Fund. That was not awful.
Yeah.
What happened was awful. Continue.
The Rock donated $5 million of his own money, and Oprah donated $5 million to the Maui Fund for the fires. And I think since then they've raised like $50 million. And all anyone does is give that guy never-ending S, because they're like, why are you asking people for money when you could just donate $50 million? Well, again, the guy donated $5 million, and it's not enough for people. And like, Oprah, why don't you just donate $100 million?
He's using his influence to get more money for everyone.
So we just love to tell people
He's not liquid.
Like, I'm sure
Tequila,
the Rock has a lot of money. Maybe Oprah could, but I don't know. I always love how we tell everyone what they should and shouldn't care about. Yeah, if I was an NBA player, you're not an NBA player, so how am I supposed to sit up there and tell Dame what he is or isn't supposed to care about? And by the way, I'm not in the middle of an 82-game season.
Yep.
I'm not in the middle of having bursitis or, a bad back or whatever the hell else is ailing me. And this is like the one little break I get in the middle of this grind of a season. And you're already bitching and moaning at me because you're making me play, the 75 games, I think, what is it, 65 or 68 or whatever to get my, to get my awards. So you keep telling guys, and it's not working. You're beating a dog at this point. It's like you're trying to whoop a dog, and eventually the dog just looks at you and is like, I don't care. Like, I'll just take my beating. And it's silly to me, as opposed to just enjoying it for what it is. And if you don't like it, don't tune in. I swear to God, our favorite pastime now is bitching. I don't like it, so now I have to yell as loud. You know what you can do if you don't like it? Don't watch. And if enough people don't watch, and if enough people don't buy tickets, and if enough people don't show up, something will change. But it doesn't. That's why I'm surprised the Pro Bowl went away. As crappy as the Pro Bowl did, the Pro Bowl did good numbers. The Pro Bowl did like 8-9 million people that tuned in. It did as good as most playoff games in other sports. But I guess that thing just got so embarrassing.
And it's not
the NFL was like, we can't keep doing this.
It's not as unsavory to say anymore, but like, a lot of people bet on the Pro Bowl, and you know what? A lot of people bet on the NBA All-Star Game. It's like, it's stupid, but millions of dollars change hands on this. And then, but there are a couple other ideas here that I think are interesting. One, how about $10 million for the defensive player of the game? If somebody wants to go down there and put clamps on, I kind of like that. Let's see. We got another one that this kind of goes.
That'd be hilarious. By the way, one dude.
You said like Pat Bev out there.
Was it like, when was it Sean Taylor that blew up that punter?
Yes. Brian Moorman, I think.
Yeah, the Bills punter. Sean Taylor just went out and just annihilated him, and was like, oh, crap.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't do this anymore.
Stop that.
They also had one with kind of a gambling aspect. How about buying in to be part of the game, and then the winners that buy in split the pot?
Okay.
So like,
if you made a gamble, because players do love to gamble.
Yeah. Like, you get the guys in the West, like, how much you want to go? Like, how much you want to go? Like, would you think we could pull this off? And they're putting their own money out there, perhaps.
That'd be fun if you actually did that. Like, no one would ever do it, but that'd be fun for guys to have, because again, the easiest way, having been in a locker room, we used to have a Papa Shot in the Broncos locker room, and I would watch dudes put $5,000 on a Papa Shot, like one shot. Like, they'd throw it from like 20 feet away. Dude's like 5 G's. And like Shannon Sharp was a notorious gambler, and he always had a big wad. Like him and like Brian Greasy and like Terrell Davis, those dudes were always laying serious coin down on the dumbest things. Gamble on anything. Like Jordan, right? Jordan, remember he was gambling with the guy on who could flick a coin.
The security dude. Yeah.
That's true. If you want to do that, let the players gamble and then put it up on the big board and like the individual bets between guys.
And see how much like certain guys stand to clear. You'll see who's going to be fighting on each of those last possessions.
There you go.
The other one, whoa, excuse me, getting over a little throat thing from the weekend. But
Pause.
This one I think could be good from a standpoint of so many people that have to benefit. Almost all of these guys have a charity that matters to them and provides them with some positive presence in social media and things like that. What if you put a representative from each person's charity courtside, and then the game MVP and winner were to get a big wad of cash for the charity?
What you got to do is, you got to put like Special Olympics, or you have to have something that
was the suggestion here with Special
guilt
Olympics.
Some people put like a Down syndrome kid like in the front row with a sign that says like you're playing for me. Like you gotta shame some people, right? Like do like a little orphan kid, you're doing something for like needy children. I'll tell you what, you put a couple cancer kids down on the baseline, like with the IV bag and like a little sign, maybe then. Might be poor form, but I'll tell you what, good luck telling that kid in the front row, wheel out a hospital bed or two. You'll get some people to care then. We'll publicly shame you into caring.
Well,
is that where we're at now? We're publicly shaming?
We mentioned like the use of penalty as incentive. The other one here is, what if the losers weren't allowed to be invited back? So, and I saw somebody else on Twitter say, what if there's a least valuable player and that person could never be an all-star again? Like you have to care.
Silent vote, loser to the Pistons.
Oh, I love this silent vote. Everyone goes into a little booth Survivor style at the end of the night, and they all like write a name and hold it up to the camera.
Jeff Probst comes out.
There's tiki torches, and they're telling people who's been eliminated. I love that.
People just throwing like, what is it? The Game of Thrones, the shame.
Yeah,
like the losers have to just strip down, and then we just huck like rotten fruit at them. I mean, but that's how silly this has gotten. Where you're trying to brainstorm again ways to get people to care, and I just don't know what's ever going to change about that. I just feel like this has become an annual tradition. And someone said on there, I actually find bitching about bitching as rampant as bitching. No offense. Yeah, this is where we're at. This is the circle. National pastime, we bitch, and then we get a separate group of people that bitch about the bitching, and then we do it all again. And it's just like our circle of logic. It's like our seventh concentric circle of hell that we just keep spinning around, and then people yell and scream. And it gives Kendrick Perkins something to do while he's, wheezing in between sentences.
Something to bitch about.
Yeah.
Well, we will turn our page on this session of bitching. We will move on to something that's still loosely associated with the All-Star Weekend. It's something Adam Silver said about the development of our players here in the United States and the Ignite in the G League.
So I think this one is the way more of the interesting story to me that came out of the All-Star.
I would agree. I think that the low-hanging fruit topic has been kicked around enough, but this one and how we develop our own players has our interest. We'll talk about that next here on Primetime on 1080 The Fan. Now it's me, Ryan Buckley, alongside Big Sook, Will Ortner on the other side of the glass. And coming out of All-Star Weekend, I think a topic that Sook and I both found, frankly, more interesting than the what should we do about the All-Star game were these comments from Adam Silver. And I couldn't find a full clip of it, so bear with me while I read what I think are the kind of important parts to you. But he was asked about the G League, and he said, I'm not sure what the future of Team Ignite will be because before there was a hole in the marketplace that we thought we were filling before doing that. Now my focus is turning to an earlier development of those players. If you're seeing now what we're seeing in terms of that close to 30% of the league, players born outside of the United States, it's clear that the development is very different in many of those programs outside the U.S. More of a focus on practice, less of a focus on games, which seems to be the opposite of many of the youth programs in the U.S. I think that now we've begun discussions with the NCAA. The vast majority of the top players will play in college and never play in the NBA, of course. So we have a common interest in just improving the game, developing players. There's no question they're coming into the league incredibly skilled, but that doesn't necessarily translate to being team basketball players. And then what I'm hearing from some of those same coaches that may be complaining about the inability to play defense is that these players are not as prepared as I'd like them to be, particularly as the very high draft picks. So I think there's an opportunity for us to be part of the community that is developing younger players, elite players, and also, as I mentioned before, in terms of increased participation numbers, of just being a more active participant and getting kids active, boys and girls, with our junior NBA and WNBA programs.
Yeah, I think this is Adam Silver basically saying they've got a problem, and the problem is the basketball that we're teaching is broken, and the basketball that's being taught overseas is superior. And if you look at the past MVPs, from Embiid to Joker to Giannis, and just, you know, and Luka, I mean, guys that are coming in from Europe, it's a better brand of basketball. And I've heard this so many times from AAU people that they'll go to a tournament and, you know, they'll play 12 games and guys don't care. Mm-hmm. Guys don't care about winning and losing. It's about, you know, being noticed. It's not about team ball.
Every weekend's a showcase. Exactly.
And, you know, you hear guys that in Europe, like, I mean, you see even like guys like Wemby and Luka, they're 16, 17 years old. They've been pros for multiple years, mm-hmm. and they're only playing like 18 minutes a night.
Yeah.
Like they're asses on the bench and they're getting coached hard. Mm-hmm. And it's a superior product that's coming in. And I also think that Adam Silver is going to look at this, and I don't think he'll ever say this, but when you look from Wemby to Luka to Jokic, if you don't think that the NBA doesn't like that Jokic is the best player, you're fooling yourselves. When you hear the Kendrick Perkins and some of these guys bitching about him winning 3 MVPs in a row, and, you know, they love to drag him because it's not an exciting game. And you know, he's a big goofy white guy from Serbia, and he's kicking the league's ass right now, and they don't like it. And it's not, when you talk about the face of the NBA, right? You know, whether that's, you know, going from Magic to Jordan to LeBron, and then you look at who's going to be there. I think Steph, you know, ran with that a little bit.
Sure.
But you look at who's coming down the pipe. They don't want Luka. They don't want Joker. You don't want.
No, they want homegrown to be the face of the league.
Yes. And I think when you look at like the NHL, I think one of the problems that the NHL has always had is they're not Americans. The best players in the world are not American. Yeah, it's a bigger problem in that there's not a lot of, you know, people play hockey and it's a harder sport. But, you know, when you go through a list of the NHL All-Stars and you can't pronounce half their names and they can't sit up there and give you a great interview, you know, you can call that xenophobic or all you want. But, you know, when you're trying to appeal to the broadest audience you can, people don't love it when there's a thick accent that they can't understand. And people don't love when Jokic is up there being like, I don't want to go to the championship parade. I want to go home and I want to race my horses. I find Giannis to be incredibly likable. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm sure the NBA isn't thrilled about having a big old thick accent and someone that's not from here. And the same thing with Wemby, who may end up being the face of the NBA. So I think when you're Adam Silver and you're looking down the road and you kick this ahead 15, 20 years, yes, I think the NBA realizes that there is a problem, that the world game is catching up, and in some ways it's surpassing, certainly at the youth level, it is surpassing what we do in the States. And you're seeing this more and more in these international tournaments. We ain't cleaning up anymore. The world has caught up.
That's right.
100%. And that's not a good thing. The NBA loves to say we're trying to expand the game to a global market, but they still need the homegrown talent to be the thing. Mm-hmm. And I think they realize that maybe not right now, but you're starting to lose your grip. And again, kick it down the road a decade or two, and there's an issue.
Well, I want to keep this conversation going in the next segment. We are up against the clock, but is youth academies the way to do this? And is that good for our youth and our sports here in the U.S.? I want to ask you about your thoughts about that. Still some tidbits to get to around the NBA. Got to talk a little bit about Blazers ratings. Yuck. We'll get to that, as well as Justin Fields, maybe the first domino to fall in the quarterback carousel in the NFL. That's all coming up next, or coming up ahead on Primetime. You're listening to Primetime with Isaac and Suk on 1080 The Fan. out today. He is in Las Vegas. He will be back tomorrow. Big Sook and I are going to keep things moving along here, and I want to carry on the conversation we started last segment. Adam Silver with a statement over the weekend about the G League Ignite, the developmental league and program that they have, and essentially making comments that he'd like to see more development in American basketball players earlier.
Yeah.
And
because the G League isn't getting it done. The G League Ignite, and especially in the face of NIL, you're going to be able to. Less and less people are going to the G League Ignite because you're going to be able to make a ton of money on NIL. I mean, it's not some sort of great, like, coming into the league. No offense to, some of the guys that have come in from that league. They're not coming in prepared like the Europeans. You got to go. I mean, those guys, the European guys, they started at 10. Some of those guys started at 8. When did Messi? I know it's soccer, but Messi's family moved from Argentina to Spain, I think, when he was like 8 or 9 years old.
And you and I were talking about this in the break. When I was in the Bay Area covering sports down there, was looking to do a feature. There was this little soccer wizard down there. His name was Joshua Pinadath, and he was like 8 or 9 years old, and these YouTube videos made him look like a little Messi. Yeah. When he was 11, his family moved him from the Bay Area to Spain so that he could be in the Real Madrid Academy.
Yeah, and I said that's where they found Messi and moved him over there. He was a little kid. There's video of him of just playing in the colors, playing in the Barcelona striped jerseys when he was like 10 years old. And this is the thing, they do this around the world, and I don't know a cultural fit. I just don't know if I don't know how that would go here.
That was what I was going to ask you. Could we achieve that here, or are the people who would get involved in it the over-the-top sports parents? And
I hate to do this because I hate sports parents. No offense, but I think travel ball, it's just the dumbest thing in the world. It's so ridiculous where we've gone with youth sports. But from Tiger Woods to Serena and Venus Williams, Bryce Harper did this. LeBron to a certain extent when he was like 13. Going all in with your kid when they're that talent, it works. Now, does it raise good human beings? Does it raise you to be kind of screwed up? I mean, Harper turned out okay. I think LeBron obviously turned out okay. The Williams sisters, Tiger seems to be a little
damaged.
Little damaged, but I mean, I don't know.
He's been pretty damn successful too.
Exactly. So, I mean, that works. Don't get me wrong, but I remember seeing an HBO Real Sports piece on this. I know it's weird, apples to oranges, but the LPGA is dominated by South Koreans. I guess like golf in South Korea, it is like every girl, they just like this is look up the top 20 players in the LPGA. It's littered with South Koreans, and when these girls are like 8. Their parents pull them out of school and they go to these golf academies, and they are cranking out the best golfers in the world. And that gets highlighted as this great thing. And what they highlighted in this piece is what you don't see is the thousands of girls that don't make it.
The fallout, essentially, on the other side.
And all of a sudden you're 18 years old and you have no education to speak of. And you're just, it's kind of a sad thing, like racehorses that get put out to pasture. And you've just, you have no other skills. Your whole life has been golf. And then it's like, oops, it's not going to happen. So, like in the U.S., if we open this up and we said, hey, we're going to do what everyone else does. McEnroe has talked about this with tennis. John McEnroe, we don't have elite U.S. tennis players.
And we haven't for a decade.
And his thing is because when the kids in Europe are 8 and 10, they go and they go to these academies and this is their life. And so far in the country, we haven't been willing to do that. And I don't know what the backlash would be. I don't know.
Are you surprised that hasn't happened? I kind of am to an extent. It feels like there's enough competitive juices here that we would have created something like that on our own. But maybe it's that the parents can't delineate and who's a future star and who's not. I don't know.
Can you imagine the absolute early on? Maybe it would sort itself out, but can you imagine the S show?
No.
Of sports parents pulling their 10-year-old out of everything and just saying, you are going to go live, breathe sports. We don't care about anything else. This is what you are going to do. Can you imagine how many dumbass parents would be putting in a kid that has zero chance that would get dumped into these academies? One, it would be I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet due to the massive cash grab. I don't know from a society standpoint if we would be okay with that. But we would produce better athletes, which is, again, I think why around the world, I think we're getting lapped. But I don't know if we're ready for the cost as a society. There would certainly be pushback.
I'd make the argument that it's already kind of happening. Like when you're a high school athlete, you have different gyms you can go train. If you're in the Seattle area, you want to go to FSP. If you're down here, you're looking at like a new athlete or an A3 or a grind time. You're looking at these different weight rooms where you can go. If you're a basketball player, you want to get in with Shoot 360. You want to find the top AAU team. You want to find the Vanport to go and play for and kind of build in that academy-like setting. The difference is in the States, we go out, and if you're on an AAU team or you're on a volleyball team, every weekend you're going out and you're playing somewhere between 8 to 12 games. Where when you look in Europe, what they're doing is they're playing 1 or 2 games and you're practicing every week. And most of these AAU teams, kids play on 2 or 3 of them because the whole thought process is, well, you're going to learn by playing in game.
More games, more exposure.
And that's why those kids from Europe, that's why they're better. It's because they're more technically sound.
And we do have the IMGs and we have was it Bishop Gorman, but these are still relatively small things. Like in other parts of the world, I mean, I know obviously we're dealing with an entirely different regime, but go look at the way China does it.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but even though like the IMGs, I feel like that's more of a place for kids to go get noticed as a senior year instead of being at their high school or like as a gap year before college. Whereas we're talking about academies that start young, 8, 10, 12.
10 years old, and people being moved across the world.
Yeah.
In China, I guess I want to say they're young. It's like 10 or younger. They do like a national. They do like a national acumen thing where like all across the country, they go into all the elementary schools.
And they like test all the kids.
And they test all the kids. And if you have an acumen for something,
that's the field you're going to.
That's what you're doing. And like the parents don't really have a choice. It's like, yeah, well, your kid is now going to be a gymnastics and you're going to be a basketball player. And it's different. We are different here. And so
and having that choice is part of what makes being here great. But when you also identify something that someone's great at and you steer them towards it, it sometimes has a positive impact too.
I don't know. I don't know where this heads, but I will say that if we get lapped and we start really lagging behind, we don't like to lose. We'll play catch up. It would be fascinating because you're right, Will, that when you see a lot of these high school basketball players, they play like no elite basketball player, I swear, plays at his high school. I mean, I guess
it doesn't seem like
I guess Kevin Love stayed in like Lake O, but most of these kids, like you see them and it's like, you're from New Jersey, but you play down in Georgia or you bounce around. And
the private schools have a lot to do with it because they can offer scholarships, they can offer money.
But I mean, and so we are seeing like people dip the toes in the water, but wouldn't it be something if we just had the full on, you're 10 years old and it's like, well, we're putting you in the USA Basketball Academy. You are going to live in New York City. You're going to live there for 10 months and we don't really care about school. Yeah, you're not doing school. Look, you're going to play basketball. From when you're 10 to 18, you're going to, like, that's a bold thing. And some of those are national programs that countries do. So again, that's a little bit different because again, we're such a bigger country and I can't ever see the United States government necessarily getting involved in that level, but
not to produce the elite level athletes.
I think the other dangerous thing with that is everybody knows the kid at 10 years old who was 5'11".
Yep.
He had a mustache, and it was a crappy one, but he had a mustache, and he could throw 70 in Little League, and he was taller than everyone, and he could jump up, and he could smack the backboard when he laid a ball up in basketball. And then guess what? When you got to high school, that was what the peak of that kid was.
But that's my point. Is over there, they don't care. Like that kid happens over there all the time, and he washes out, and no one gives.
But to them, it's worth it because
to them it's worth it. But here,
because they still yield the elite one too.
I don't know if we're willing to deal with the collateral damage. Again, go look at that piece on the LPGA in South Korea. It's sad. Like there are girls that are like 20 years old that can barely read and write. Like they have there's just no skills. They're like 20 years old and they're just absolutely fried. And if you don't make the tour, it's like, hey, but there's still parents that are just shoving them down there because the allure of it. And I feel like we would do that. I think if you gave parents the choice, there's nothing we love more in this country than believing that little Johnny and little Susie are going to be great. Look at all the travel teams. Look how many parents that can't afford it. I know people that did this. Like the families that can't afford it that are spending tens of thousands of dollars a year so that Susie can go play softball. And I hate to do this to Suze, but you're not playing professional. You're not making millions of dollars. right? You're doing it under the guise of you can get us a college scholarship. And I always ask, if you just took that money and actually put it in a college fund.
Yeah, instead of taking out a second mortgage on your house,
We see this all the time. And I just, if we went full academy style, one, it's expensive, and I think we would lean into it, and maybe that's what the future of it is. Maybe that's what, the NCAA and the idea of breaking away and the G League Ignite and all this. I do feel like we have a changing landscape in the world of sports, and it's a little bit like the metric system. Like, we're the only one that doesn't do it. Like everyone else around the world is on it. We're the only one that does this. We're the only one, like, when you travel across seas, the idea that our sports teams are tied to our elementary, middle, high school, and colleges is nuts to people. Like, we're the only country that does it. So are we going to continue to hold out and be like, what the hell is a meter and a kilometer? Kiss my ass. We're America. Or eventually, are we just going to get to the point where we're like, man, we've got to do this to catch up, because this is what the world is doing.
Well, and I guess my question is, how does it actually get done, or who's the one paying for it? Because Adam Silver clearly is saying, I think we need this. Is Adam Silver and the NBA now go out and try to fund something like this and start a new youth program, or is this like,
God? Because you imagine, like how does it people begin? Would be like, is Adam Silver kidnapping children? Because that. Like, I don't know, like, you're just going around, and again, we're having like national days where NBA scouts, like these academy, you imagine these weasels, the Sonny Vacarios of the world, like these AAU guys, like going around and like identifying kids at like 10 years old and being like, you're going to come live with me.
Silver comes and knocks at your door. Come on, kid.
Yeah, because that's not rampant for every sort of abuse that humanly possible. But I mean, it's essentially like what LeVar Ball did to his kids. He basically made his kids professional athletes at 10 years old.
He is what was Roger Williams? Was Serena and
same thing.
I mean, same type of deal with those kids. Absolutely.
The St. Browns, the Amon-Ra St. Brown brothers,
Equiminius and Amon-Ra. Yeah,
their dad did it. Again, Tigers did it. Like. There is something to be said that if
for kids with that potential, it does work.
Yes.
I think maybe you do too, that the biggest issue is the parent being able to accurately, essentially, scout the kid. Is it like, is this kid really special, or is it me wanting for them to be special?
Well, and this is a good point, Vancouver Ford text line. And this is a question I can't answer. Big money, but a life without anything but sports. Some kids might think that's a good thing. Again, that's the question. How many people are willing to roll that dice?
Right.
But how many kids
and live with that consequence if it doesn't work?
But this is the problem that I ultimately have with it. You're not asking kids, because the kid that's 8 or 9 years old, he doesn't get to make that choice.
Yeah.
You're asking parents.
No, it is the parent.
You're asking parents to take their kid and shove them into something when that kid has no choice in the matter. And you're saying, are you willing to do that? And that, I mean, I guess that's the whole idea. When you're a parent, you have that sort of control. That's weird. It's no different than, I guess, actors. Again, there's a really good documentary, and I forget what it is, but there's a hotel, or not a hotel, but apartments that are in California or in Hollywood.
Yeah, the Vine apartments.
Is that what it is?
It's
Vine?
not like called that, but all the Viners, when Vine was a thing, they all lived in the same apartment complex.
It's like every like, what is it, pilot season, right? Where they do pilots for TV shows and cast all that. All these parents from around the country move their kids into these apartments, and the apartments offer acting classes and voice lessons and all this, and you just get these, and it separates families, because it's usually the dad has to stay behind, so the mom moves out with a brother and sister, and they spend all this money, and they're really expensive, and they just bilk you for every dollar you have, under the guise of, we can make your kid a star.
We'll connect you with the right people, and you'll get your shot.
And they just keep coming back year after year after year after year, and you just see these kids, and it's sad. It is so sad to watch, because the parents are just shoving their kids into it. But we already do it with that. Are we just going to do it on a larger scale with sports? I don't know. But it certainly feels like, from a worldwide prospect, that's where this is headed.
We got to move over to a little Portland Trailblazers talk. The ratings are in from across the NBA, and boy, are they not pretty for Portland. That's coming up next on Primetime on 1080 The Fan.
It's called the Hollywood Complex. It's from 2011. I think you can find it on Netflix, but take a look. Like I said, it's an apartment complex, and people go there every year, and it's an apartment complex that rents specifically to make your kid a star. And the level of cringe that you will see, and that would, if we ever did sports academies, it would be that, just with sports instead of I guess just singing, dancing, celebrity.
Right. It would still be a snapshot of our society, and you would get a percentage of parents and kids that just it's that way.
And it's just, and I'm not trying to single out sports because, like I said, the Hollywood thing, but I just think Charles Barkley talks about this all the time, that when he goes and speaks to inner city kids, and his whole point is that when he asks everyone what they want to be, it's all the same thing. I'm going to be an athlete. I'm going to be a rapper. I'm going to be a influencer. I'm going to be on TikTok. I'm going to be a video game player.
Someone who's a big deal.
And that's, and I don't know, we have a society now, and maybe it's always been this way. I don't know. I mean, I just feel like more and more this is what we're gearing towards. And it's like, we will do anything for an opportunity to do that. And Barkley's like, no one ever says, I want to be, I want to be a welder. I want to be a plumber. I want to be a policeman, a fireman. I mean, there's a lot of really good opportunities out there, but we all want to shoot for the stars. And we already have a big enough problem with that. And if we add sports to, making 8-year-olds decide at 8, 9, 10 years old that everything else is going to be put on the back burner for the next 12 to 13 years so that I can go be a professional athlete. Yeah, the 1 or 2% that still make it may be better, but it's not going to change the amount of kids that end up being professional. So you're still getting the same percentage of kids that are 8, 9, 10 years old that are washing out. Mm-hmm. It's just the ones that make it will be that much better. Imagine a player like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a young, like SGA or something, or,
sure,
whatever young Halliburton. Like, you get one of those guys and you had them doing that when they were 8 years old, you would have had think about how good they are now and how much better they would be.
Sure.
But then you think about all the kids that just
would only commit to basketball and nothing else, and then where does that leave them?
Yeah.
Well, moving on to the Portland Trailblazers, as I believe most people have seen at this point in the day, it's not going to be new news to hear that the local television ratings are in, and they are not good.
No.
In fact, so bad that they are at the very bottom of the league. The Blazers ranked dead last in ratings year over year, have seen their ratings dip 49%. I think that everyone in the Portland metro area probably knows this by now, but my question to you, Suk, is big deal or not so much? We know this team's in a rebuild, and we knew that they were not going to be as competitive. We also know that they changed networks, and so that obviously has an impact here, but 49% is still a very jarring number.
Yeah. I mean, you got a 50% drop in viewership. Oh my God. And two things. One, obviously, you lose the best player in franchise history. Mm-hmm. This team is warmed over garbage. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. The only time I watch, and I do watch, one, this is our job.
Yep.
But I think you and I both watch for the same reason. I watch because I have an
a little investment.
Yeah, a little investment on it. And I've been to a couple games this year, and I think I've been to maybe 4 games, and I'll say that the crowd it's not terrible.
And to that point, in this article that I saw, specifically about the Blazers ratings, their attendance is still great. They're still 13th in the league in attendance. They've only dipped 1.9% this year in attendance.
Only 1%.
Yeah.
Because the games that I've been to, like I've seen the Cavaliers, the Nets. I haven't seen like a great team come into town, but I've been to a couple games, and it's not full, but it's not barren. It's not an absolute wasteland, although the one I went to during the ice storm thing.
I bet that was.
That was rough. There were like 9 people there.
Even the players couldn't get there.
Yeah, that was bad.
Aiton couldn't make it.
That was a little,
I offered to drive him.
Yeah,
he turned me down.
Klondike Will to the rescue.
That was a little rough. But if you're the Blazers, that has to be beyond alarming. So the other factor is, besides the fact that you're not very good, you knew you weren't going to be very good, you have arguably one of the worst TV deals known to man.
Yeah.
You're on Root Sports, which can't be streamed unless you have cable.
Right.
How many people? I'm a cable guy, by the way. I'm thinking about going back because I just the streaming stuff drives me crazy. But like, I was like one of the last holdouts, and even I was like, all right, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm gonna give it a year and see what happens when I cut. So all these people are cutting the cord.
I'm on YouTube TV. I can't get Blazers. I watch Blazers highlights on Twitter afterwards.
Right, you can't you can't get the NBA package,
right?
Because they're blocked out. I'll tell you a little secret. I watch the Blazers on an illegal stream. It's the only way I can watch it.
We've gotten some reports from others that that has been a big contributor. That basically, because of the fact that you would either have to change back to cable, or I believe pay up a tier on cable because of where Root is on the premium tier, or the next step up.
Can't even just have the normal, or I think even mid level. You have to basically have like the sports package.
And so I think it's like a perfect storm of crap for them, where it's, in addition to the barrier of entry being higher, it's also happening at a time when the team is bad. And so, like this person here on the Vancouver Forward text line says, I can't watch them, and I'm not going to seek out Comcast just for the rebuild. And I think a lot of people are in that spot. People who have cut the cord, who used to have access to them and don't. They're like, well, I might go back to the Blazers, but not right now.
Yeah, you have a crappy product. You're bad. You've been bad for 3 years. You signaled that you were bad. You burned a lot of people by getting rid of the whole Lillard thing, and all the drama that went behind that. You sold us one bill of goods, with the whole Scoot Henderson. Oh, he's not going to miss a beat. Like, you didn't even say you were in a rebuild. No, you even lied about being in a rebuild.
You even said that Dame and Scoot could play together.
Yeah, you have the whole ownership thing hanging over people's head, which I know pisses people off. And by the way, that's not changing anytime soon. Jody's not selling this team, like, for the foreseeable future.
She shouldn't. She should hold on to him for as long as she can.
It's going to be money. Exactly. We found out the other day she makes like $150 million a year managing this trust, and every day that goes by and these go up, she gets a percentage of the sales. So buckle up. Jody ain't going anywhere.
Yep.
Jody's going to be here for a while. And so you have that pisses people off, and then you have arguably the most asinine TV deal that no one can see.
Well, people even pointing out here that they often get bumped to Route 2 for the Kraken. And so they're even makes it even harder to find. And that's tough on fans, to have your team take a significant step down and then also make their product harder to find, even if you wanted to.
But it is it is rough. It is. I mean, if you're the Blazers, you have to look at that and think, my God. And I know Danny was tweeting about this today, and they were talking about it. I mean, they got 2 more years of this Root deal. They better figure out something real fast. I mean, no one can look at a 50% dip in viewership and think that in any shape or form that's going to be positive. He talked about maybe the Blazers buying back some of the games. He said a lot of these deals that he's aware of have the ability for teams to buy back some of that inventory and then either put it on, KGW, put it on over-the-air TV where you can get it, or like streaming. Like they can make it available to stream for people directly. Like you can go to blazers.com and stream the game and cast it to your TV or whatever. But you got 2 more years of this, and if you're Portland, you better be damn careful that you aren't. I mean, this is now 3 years of garbage ass teams in the lottery, and you do this for another year or two, and you have a 50% drop, and then next year, let's say you add another 10 to 15% on top of that. You can be doing permanent damage, and I promise you the Blazers are aware of this, and it would be shocking if next year, if you didn't see a hunk, I'm going to say 10 to 15 games that are more access, and you better believe at the end of the 2 years, if they have any sort of intelligence, from the old Comcast deal, which screwed people over, to now the Root deal, which screwed even more people over, that 2 years from now, they better wise up and make this available to as many people as possible for as cheap as humanly possible, because you are doing permanent damage to your viewers.
And I do think that the Blazers are in a unique position to potentially recover from this, like you said, and pull themselves out and maybe redistribute a little bit. They're one of only, I believe, 3 teams in the league that actually produce their own pre and post game shows, and then they sell it to the network. When I worked down in the Bay Area for NBC Sports, Bay Area in California, it was our company that had the trucks that was producing the live events, the games. The Blazers do that themselves, and then they give it to Root. So they get to decide how that product goes, and that might give them a little bit more leeway about, or at least a little bit more control about where they go and how they make it accessible, because this can't be something that can keep up for them.
No, and Vancouver Forward text line, and this is true. The attendance may not have dipped that much, but the ticket value has 100%. I got a buddy of mine that's got second or third row, and I post him for him sometimes. Like he's like, hey man, and I'll go on my Twitter and I'll just be like, hey, he's got 4 seats. It's like second row behind the Blazers bench, like where the families, like where Lillard's family used to sit. And dude, I have posted those tickets for him 15 times this year. He usually ends up asking about 115 for each one of those seats. I bet you he sells them half the time. Like, I mean, you're giving, like, he is eating money on these things left and right. But he's like, I don't know, I'm not going, and he's busy. He's like, he used to kind of give them out to be. You can't give them away. Like, I've posted before, like, where, you know, someone comes to town, I'm like, $100 a seat, and people are like, you couldn't pay me $40 to go to that game. So yeah, the attendance may be there. They are so cheap right now. They are so cheap across the board. They are giving tickets away. And so that's the other thing. Yeah, you may be getting people to go into that building, but they ain't paying, and they certainly ain't paying a premium.
They're not paying what they were last year, that's for damn sure.
Nope. And when you get people, when you get a 50% drop in viewership, and this is where you got to be careful with any sort of rebuild. It's one thing to rebuild, and it's another thing to rebuild and become irrelevant. Because when you start rebuilding year after year, this is essentially year 3. Don't make no mistake. The last 2 years they have tanked with injuries, and they have pulled the chute on things. And now this is year 3. You go into next year and you're still a garbage ass team that wins 20 games. And now you're 4 years into that and no one can see your product. You become very, very much in the danger becoming irrelevant. The one thing that Portland has going for them is it's a bit of a one-horse town. Yeah, we got the Timbers and the Thorns, but can you imagine?
But if you start taking that for granted, you're in trouble, because it's also, I feel like it's also a town that expects you to care. You know, like they're not just, people are going to keep coming back because the Blazers are the only game and they've loved them forever. But you also, when you turn somebody away after a really long time, it's hard to get them back.
Yeah. Someone said, I've been offered, this is from Dave, Vancouver Ford Texas. I've been offered free tickets / parking and turned them down numerous times this season. I found another one. I found tickets on StubHub for the Blazers game against the Timberwolves for $2 each.
Yep. I found them for $4.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the Timberwolves. And that was, I said, my buddy, we tried to put up those seats for the Timberwolves. I think it was like $115, $120. That's the team with the best record in the West. Courtside seats. Couldn't sell them for $100. Back in the day, if you go back to Lillard, let's go back 6 years ago, those seats are, if you're trying to buy them on the secondary market, you're $800, $600, $700, $800, depending on who's coming to town. Lakers come to town, you might be paying $1,000. Mm-hmm. They're $100. And so this is the danger of rebuild, and it's the danger of losing a community. You imagine if we had Major League Baseball, if we had hockey, if we had something else that was directly
kind of do have hockey.
Yeah,
not to that degree though.
No, but here, let me put it in this kind of perspective. I don't have a lot of money. And so when my buddies and I try and figure out something to do on the weekend, it's usually something that's cheap, right?
Sure.
It has now become an idea and something that we've done where it's, hey, let's go to the Blazer game because that's the cheapest ticket we can get.
Yeah.
Where 2 years ago, I couldn't get a Blazers ticket. I had to beg family members like, hey, can I please tag along? Like, I'll pay for parking, or I'll buy the food, or I'll do this.
Yeah, I remember a couple of years ago, I wanted to go when the Warriors were in town, and even like 300 level was like, I'm like, I can't do it.
You couldn't afford it. It didn't make sense. And now it's like, I can go on any secondary market and find a ticket, and then I'll buy that ticket and I'll move up at some point, because while yes, the sales are only down 1%. There's still a lot of empty seats, and no one's going to stop me and my friends from moving as long as we're not the worst fans there. So that's something to pay attention to with this as well.
Well, we got to get going to In the News. We are way over, but I think a worthy conversation there about the Blazers and what future distribution needs to look like, because right now it ain't working. In the News is coming up next, but first, Will with SportsCenter. He will be back tomorrow. For now, it's me, Buck, and Sook, and Ortner on the other side. And it's also time for In the News. Today, Jason, there's a lot of things to celebrate. It is National Muffin Day. Are you a muffin man?
They're delicious, but I try not to eat them because they're just garbage. The same thing like donuts. They're wonderful, but you should not eat them. I always enjoy people that are like, I'm going to go to the gym and just let me eat this muffin real quick.
National Cherry Pie Day. That do anything for you?
Yeah, cherry pie is in my top 4 or 5 pies.
I like Warrant.
Yeah.
I like Warrant as well. Cherry Pie, the song, and Cherry Pie, the dessert. It's also National Comfy Day. You look more comfy than I do today. I think you got a more of a sweat vibe going, and I'm a little jealous.
Big fan of like the like tactical pants, like the stretchy pants now, like kind of half joggers, half dress pants.
Sure.
Pant technology has come a long way. There's no reason anymore for like stiff, uncomfortable denim. Throw some stretch in there.
And I will also say, I feel like athleisure was dominated by women for many years. Dudes starting to get their due in the athleisure department as well. I got some new pants and zip up tops and things like that just are starting to hit just right.
There's no reason anymore for uncomfortable jeans or like old school sweats. We've come a long way.
Is this an ad for like some kind of clothing company? Are you guys doing a bit here?
We are not doing it, but I think we just both value comfort a great deal.
Yeah, there's like I said, there's a lot of good quality pants out there, although they're creeping up. It's going the way of the hooded sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you look at the price of like a pair of like joggers and you're like, Jeebus. Like the Lululemon stuff, I know everyone loves that, but
yeah.
It's like $130 for like a pair of like joggers.
Do you know how many Blazer games I could go to for that?
You can have
I'd go to the rest of the season. Yeah.
It's also National Love Your Pet Day, Sook, and I know that you love yours.
I do, because I have a proper dog, unlike some people.
Also a proper dog. She just happens to be a 35-pound Labradoodle. It's also, I like to go through the birthdays on this day, and boy, we've got some hard-hitting birthdays today.
Got some legit?
Charles Barkley.
Okay.
Cindy Crawford.
Ooh.
Kurt Cobain. Olivia Rodrigo. And Rihanna.
First off,
do you know who Olivia Rodrigo even is?
I do. She was, I saw her once perform with Billy Joel. I was like, yeah, there you go.
Hi, in your face, Ortner.
I want him to name a song.
Couldn't tell you. I saw her sing New York State of Mind with Billy Joel. I'm aware of her, but I couldn't tell you one thing that she sings. Riri, on the other hand, fantastic. And this made me feel old as dirt. Cobain he would be 57 today. It's weird to think about Kurt Cobain being 57 years old.
Yeah.
Because you see, I think he died at 27 when he was just angry youth. Weird to see like what he would have mellowed out and or would he have gone like become some sort of a recluse or whatever.
There's so many artists like that I wonder about. The whole only the good die young thing. I mean, you think about like what would Tupac's career have looked like? Like people who went really early that showed a ton of talent and a ton of promise. It's fascinating to think about which way it would have gone and how it would have gone.
Yeah, like 60-year-old Tupac. Because you're seeing that with like Snoop Dogg and like Dr. Dre. Would Tupac go the way of
and
Snoop?
Some of them are aging like fine wine and some of them not so much.
He's like hanging out with like Martha Stewart and like Snoop Dogg will do anything with anybody. Like collaborating with Justin Bieber and Katy Perry, for God's sakes.
I do have some actual news for you. I have fentanyl news, Jason. Would you like the good or the bad first?
There's good fentanyl news? I didn't know there was good fentanyl news.
Well, there were 10 suspects arrested for dealing fentanyl in the Southwest Jefferson Street and 10th Avenue area.
Well, that's good.
So we're starting to clean it up, but unfortunately they've said the problem continues to persist.
Well, look, we can't do the, like, you're not going to prosecute anyone. Hopefully they actually go to jail for a significant amount of time as opposed to, here you go right back out on the street. But I always wondered, like, so you arrested 10 people for selling fentanyl? Like, I can't buy fentanyl anymore? Like, oh no, what am I going to do with these 10 guys? I'll go to the 8 million other people that are selling it?
Better than not trying at all, though?
Yes. I mean, I understand you got to do something, but yeah, like, what is it? The Portland police said, like, estimates, what is it, 75 or 80% of street drugs are laced with fentanyl now in Portland? That's some terrifying S. I think it was some congressman's kid just died of fentanyl overdose. Is it Congress or maybe I forget which one, but yeah, some government official's kid just had an accidental fentanyl overdose. What kind of world are we living in anymore where you can't just do a couple railers at a party?
Sorry that I listened to Nancy Reagan. I'm the last line of that DARE program, and I've never given in.
Well, I'm serious. Like, I beg my kids. Because, like, when you're like 18, 19, in your 20s, even in your early 20s, like, that's the time to make dumb decisions. It's the time where you God, we've all done horrible things and you shouldn't do it, but you learn from it and you have some fun times. Maybe there's some consequences to it, but you know what? You know what being 22 and making a dumb choice at a party shouldn't lead to?
Dead.
You being dead.
And that's the thing. It feels like the consequences are way higher than they used to be. And I don't know if that's just perception or if it's actually become that way.
You just can't. I tell my kids all the time, you just can't. You just can't trust it. You know how many times when I was young that someone was like, hey, take this pill. And you're like, okay. It's just what you did. Some of like teammates and stuff. Hey, man, I got this pain pill from a doctor. Take this. You can't do that stuff anymore because there's just too many of these stories out there.
And then here's for your bad news, if that was the good news.
That's the good news. What's the bad news?
Well, we have the numbers in from the overdose deaths by state over the last year over year. Guess where Oregon and Washington rank?
Guessing pretty high.
1 and 2.
Hey, look at us. Yeah, so we don't have the number one airport anymore, but we OD like no one else.
From September 2022 to 23, Oregon saw a 41.5% increase in overdose deaths.
Good Lord.
So getting close to 50% more. Now, quantitatively, that doesn't mean we have the most, but we just improved the most in those deaths year over year.
Well, again, and per capita, I'm sure New York and California.
Sure, I don't think the most people are dying here, but we're on the up and up.
We're on the come up. We're getting there. Hey, and I'll admit when I was wrong. I was when they were like, "Hey, decriminalize drugs." I was like, "Good." Like, well, why? Yeah, it turned out that was a terrible idea.
Those numbers, by the way, from the CDC.
My bad, everybody.
Beer.
There you go.
Just drink beer.
Drink beer. Smoke a little herb.
Pot. Yeah,
a little herb if you want. Maybe get into some shrooms. Do something that grows in the ground.
And then additionally, the other statistic I saw in the CDC report that was a little bit jarring. What do you want to guess the increase in percentages is of fentanyl deaths since pre-pandemic?
No, I bet it is just alarming.
Over 100.
Yeah, it's
over 100%.
It's got to be through the roof.
Try 1,500%. Yeah. 1,500%. That's over a 4-year period in increase in fentanyl deaths.
And I believe that's simply just a product of it just being laced. I don't think people are like, oh, let's do some fentanyl. It's in everything.
It also just feels, I don't want to say it's en vogue, but it just feels like I don't remember fentanyl being a big deal 4 years ago, and now it just seems like it's everywhere.
I think it's cheap and it's easy to cut with, and it gets you hooked. Yeah, like right away.
Yeah, you can lace it, and all of a sudden you've got something that's super power packed. But you think you're taking one thing, and you're next thing you know, you read stories like people go to parties and there's 10 people. Like one person ends up surviving. It's like the Kansas City Chiefs party. Like one guy walks away from it and everyone else is dead. Like, oh my God.
We got a couple more stories for you coming up on In the News, including 3 escapees from a local correctional facility and stuck in a ditch. That's next on Primetime, 1080 The Fan.
This is The Fan's window into sports.
News. A couple more stories to get to before we reach the Hot 5 at 5. This one coming to us from Woodburn in the McLaren Youth Correctional Facility.
Speaking of fentanyl and meth,
We have 3 19-year-olds on the loose who have escaped the facility around 9 p.m. on Sunday night. Anyone with information on these 3 is suggested to call 911.
they're on the lam.
Because they've all been, they're all in there for pretty serious crimes. One robbery, one in carry and use of a dangerous weapon, one attempted assault, carry and use of a dangerous weapon, and one with 2 attempted assaults, 1 aggravated harassment. So
I gotta ask the question, because I know we all want to go all Shawshank and like Andy Dufresne, but has anyone ever escaped like outside of like a Whitey Bulger type that has like massive amounts of money? Like when you're one of these donkeys and like you break out of jail,
you're getting found.
where do you think you're going?
That's a great question.
Like you're not going to Mexico. You don't have a couple 100,000. You don't have mob connections to disappear.
Well, it's not like
Don't
crossing a border's easy. I mean, okay, here come the texts, but yeah, but I mean, like, yeah, what are they gonna do? I guess is the question.
I always wonder that. Like, you always see these stories, and then, like, a day or two later, remember the one dude that got caught in the mud? he was trying to
Oh yeah,
cross
I mean,
the
he
water.
needed to be saved
He needed
essentially,
to be
right?
saved. Like, I mean, I'm all for it. I get it, right? You're like, man, I don't want to do some time. But all these crimes that you threw out there, that's not like 20. Like, I get it. If I'm going down for murder and I'm gonna get a needle stuck into my arm, I get it, man. What do you got to lose, right? Let's get out of there. Like you at least you're gonna go out. You go out like the town or whatever, like Blaze of Glory, I guess. That maybe there's some you romanticize a little bit. But this, I don't know. Let's say you're facing 8 months in prison, knowing us, 6 weeks, and you'll be out. And you're like, I don't want to do that. So now you're going to go, and I'm assuming this adds time on. I just never understood that. Seems very counterproductive to a long-term sort of plan to break out of, it's not even like a full-scale jail.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think more good is going to come of this for them. But then again, they haven't been caught yet, so we'll see.
Well, maybe they just believe, like in their heart of hearts, they're like their conscience is like a third base coach. He's just waving them in constantly. Yeah, you got this. Stand up.
And then finally, up in Sammamish, Washington, a man now in satisfactory condition after being rescued from a trench. There was a residential trench being dug outside his home. He fell in, could not get out. It required the help of Eastside Fire and Rescue with Redmond, Bellevue, and Shoreline crews to execute a trench rescue at the home. He was transported away with life-threatening injuries, but again, is in satisfactory condition.
Life-threatening injuries.
So I don't know how, it doesn't
He must
say,
have broke something.
it doesn't say how deep the trench was or how old the man was. Both probably significant
I was
pieces
gonna
of
say
information.
that's got to be a fairly deep trench, or it's got to be a very, very old man. Because that's, you would think that like you fall into a trench. I'm thinking like a 6 to 8 foot trench. He's rolled down that thing, right?
I would think so, unless you took a header like he's doing the waste management kid
Yeah.
where he thought he was jumping into water and it was a sand trap.
Oh boy, yeah.
I'm awful, I'm always fascinated by these sorts of stories. I read one the other day, some lady in Maui.
Oh, I saw this.
There's a lady in Maui that was hiking, and she got off the trail. She was lost for 17 days.
Oh yeah, and it's like a 26-mile wide island.
You
Just
can
walk left.
You can walk across this. You can walk across the island in like 2.5 days.
I think someone said that you could do the perimeter like a couple times of the entire island in the time that she was lost. I mean, I do understand that at times when people get lost and they're disoriented, sometimes they walk in circles or things
Sure.
like that happen.
But
we don't know exactly, but
Couldn't
this
you just walk to the water?
and that's what other people are saying. Like, just keep walking downhill. You'll eventually find the coast and the people. Like,
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that. Like, you pick out a landmark and you just like, hey, I'm going to walk to that. I see that big tree. I'm just going to keep walking to that. Like, again, the ocean. I was fascinated. How do you get lost for 17 days in Maui?
it's too small to be lost for 17 days. It's fascinating.
I will take the plunge. You can take me to Maui and stick me in the middle of the wilderness, and I will try and get out.
Ortner versus Wild.
I was always interested in these stories because they never give you like all the details. Like, I would like to know what happened to the dude.
I
in
did
the
see
trench.
one quote that was like, oh yeah, like something like spiritually told her to go some way, and I'm like, oh boy. So was there something guiding this quest? I don't know.
17 days though. In this
Yeah.
case, dude fell in the trench. Well, I'm glad that
And she lost her shoes apparently.
this guy's life-threatening injury, so maybe he's not okay, but hopefully he'll be.
No, they said he's in satisfactory
All right,
condition
we're
now,
good.
so I
We're
think he's
good.
been upgraded.
We're out of the ditch. Feeling
on the
better.
up and up.
Yeah, no
Well,
one
that
should
is-
die in a ditch.
That is your In the News for Tuesday, February 20th. Coming up next, the hot 5 at 5. You're listening to Primetime with Isaac and Suk on 1080 The Fan. City, hopefully making a little bit of money. He will be back tomorrow, but today you get me, Buck. That is Souk over there. Will Ortner. I don't have the drops today. I was looking for them, and it appears I need like some sort of software update or something. So
it happens.
So Will's going to be manning that once we get to the club. But for now, we move forward. Been through some of the NBA All-Star stuff, as well as the talk of youth academies. You can catch all of that from the first couple hours over on our podcast stream. Anywhere you find podcasts, we're also streaming live on YouTube. You can subscribe at 1080 The Fan for that. Couple things that we have coming up. I want to talk a little bit about the quarterback carousel in the NFL, as we may be getting our first domino to fall here. And then additionally, some fun stuff coming up in the club. We might even have too much, which is never a bad thing, but may go a little dealer's choice here. I'll plant a couple seeds, and even the text line can weigh in what they want to hear about. How far is too far when it goes to an Airbnb host collecting money they believe they're owed? Okay. What illicit activities had a Northern California library shut down? Fatal shooting over a barbecue pit, and an OnlyFans related manhunt in Russia. So those are our options coming up a little bit later.
Just a bounty of things to get through. We were talking earlier about the youth sport thing, and my kids are old, and I'm happy to be through raising my kids. There's a lot of fun and joy I got from raising my kids. The one thing I am really happy about is that I don't have to go through any of the youth sports stuff. I know a lot of people, because you got young kids, and even when I was raising my kids, like that was the rise of it had started to happen. Luckily, none of my kids were really into sports. I may have something to do with that, but I'm just happy that I don't have to deal with any of that. Like I think about what I would have been like, and maybe I would have been different because it would have a different time. I just think about when I was a high achieving athlete. I just think about what that would have been like to be raised in that world. And as knowing myself, I want nothing to do with it. I want my kids to have nothing to do with it. I just don't see any aspect of youth sports and that I think is a positive anymore. I mean,
I think at the base levels it is, but it's once you start adding all these layers of trying to be elite, and like you said, the traveling teams and the paying to get exposure and things like that, it's like it takes the fun out of it. Like the whole idea of youth sports is like teaches you about life and teamwork, and you're out there doing something and you're making friends, and like that's what youth sports is supposed to be. And it's gone in a different direction.
And that's why I wonder, like, of all the good lessons that you get, because I learned a lot from sports, and look, it took me to places in my life, and I'm very fortunate for it, but I think I'm the exception. Obviously, I made it fairly far, and even me, like I didn't do anything with it. It helped me get this job, but it's like, I made it to the NFL. I didn't make any money. I had my cup of coffee for 2 years, and it booted me out. And I just think about all the negatives that go along with it now, and I really do wonder if I was raising my kids now, where I would side with how much of this is positive and how much of this is not worth it. Like we talked to Joey Harrington about this a lot too. And
his kids are pretty competitive soccer players.
Yeah, I just think it's getting harder and harder. And for parents, at least it would be for me, to make that determination of where's the line between what's healthy and appropriate and the benefits outweighing the negatives and vice versa.
And my wife and I have already had this conversation a little bit, just having young kids, and our kids aren't of the age yet, but she's like, listen, I don't want to be that family that's driving 3 and 4 hours out of town to play 4 games every weekend or whatever. Like
that's your whole life.
If our kid wants to play sports, great. Like he can play on his high school team, and we can do the summer league that's like down the street at our local school or whatever. But if we get to a point where one of my kids is a decent enough athlete that they say, hey, Dad, I want to pursue this further, fine. But I'm not going to be signing him up for the elite level things and dragging him all over the state and the Northwest region to do it.
Yeah.
But we are a little bit up against it now. It's time for the Victor Rico's Hot 5 at 5.
Oh. Hot topics, hot opinions.
Oh, golly, I'm hot today.
And hot air. It's time for the Hot 5 at 5.
That's hot.
The Hot 5 at 5 on Primetime with Isaac and Sue.
No, I mean it. That's very hot.
The Hot 5 at 5 with Isaac and Sue. Brought to you on The Fan by Victor Rico's Mexican Food, the most popular burrito spot in Oregon. Online at victorricos.com. Number 5.
Well, a little bit of good news, or at least a little bit of justice out of Kansas City today, as we learned that there have been a couple arrests made in the shooting from the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade. They arrest 2 adults on murder charges, and then there are also the 2 juveniles who are being held, I believe, on weapons charges.
Sounds like the adults were the ones shooting at each other. They handed the guns off to the kids, had the kids take off, and tried to have the kids take the blame because obviously they'd face lesser charges. One of those kids, by the way, if you've seen the video, he got shot in the face.
Yeah, like in the lower, like the jaw.
His jaw's gone.
It's,
Have you seen why it started?
No, I didn't see why it started.
Yeah,
no.
according to court documents now, it started because someone looked at someone else.
Wonderful.
That's 2 groups of people, and someone was looking at someone else. They didn't like the way they were looking at them. Someone said,
did they know him from beforehand? Like,
that's at least this was from I saw it on Pro Football Talk. I guess the court documents have been filed, and that's where it started. Someone was looking at someone else, and the other person didn't like it.
Well, that's terrible, but we do get justice. And I'd heard an account from one of the people that tackled one of the shooters saying beforehand that it seems like something fishy was going on with adults before it came to the kids. So that at least all adds up. And yeah, it was adults putting kids in a bad position, it sounds like. We do have a change to the structure of the college football playoff. We thought this was coming. The writing was on the wall. We're getting a conference dissolved, but the format will be a 5 and 7. That means the 5 conference winners will all get an automatic bid to the playoff. The top 4 ranked of those 5 conference winners will get the first round bye, and then your other 7 will be the top ranked teams outside of those conference winners.
Basically what happens is you chop the Pac-12.
Yes.
So the 4 Power 5 conferences, and then one of the other group of 5 will get
the top other group of 5.
The top other group of 5, and then everything else will be in. And the only hold up to this is they need a unanimous vote, and the Pac-2 was holding this up. They put their proposal out there. There was pushback on it. They ultimately couldn't hold anyone hostage, and so here we are. Also, if you've seen, there's some saber rattling going on between the Big Ten and the SEC because they're trying to negotiate beyond 2026. And they're basically threatening everyone else to either get on board with what they want or they'll go take their ball and go do their own thing.
Yeah, we'll try to make a little bit of time for this at the back end of this hour, but that is interesting. The potential for Big Ten SEC to basically say, if you don't pay us a bigger share of this whole playoff money, we'll go do our own thing with the best teams in the country.
They're threatening without threatening. Wink, wink.
Yeah, exactly right. Number 3, NBA All-Star festivities over the weekend. Minimal Blazer representation. Scoot Henderson in the Rising Stars game, but we did see former Blazer Dame Lillard basically defend his crown in the 3-point and then go on to win All-Star Game MVP.
Yeah, won on the last shot in the 3-point contest, and a lot of people are hoping that maybe this that spurs him on. It's been a bit of a rough go this year for Lillard and the Bucks.
And he's been pretty candid about this. I think it's been a rough year for him personally. Off the court.
He's struggling, being away from his family and a new city and all that. And you can tell that he is not. This has not been a seamless transition.
MLB to PDX or MLB to NSH or SLC. Jeff Passan reporting that it seems inevitable that there will be expansion in Major League Baseball, not just relocation, but that Nashville and Salt Lake City are likely the top 2 candidates for that relocation.
Yeah, we know they're going to put one in the East. Nashville is all but done.
Yep.
And then it sounds like it's between Salt Lake and us. And unfortunately, it sure feels like Salt Lake has a giant leg up, and that we used to be in the lead, and then Salt Lake leaped us, and now we have to play catch up. And can we? I don't know.
I don't know that you're going to necessarily compete with Salt Lake at this point, but there's also it feels like there's always rumblings and unhappy franchises. Now there's a little bit coming out of Arizona that they might not be able to get a stadium done there, and their owner threatening without threatening says, well, we'd love to get it done here, but if we can't, I'm sure someone would love to have us. And so there's teams like that, teams like Tampa. Even the A's haven't quite settled things in Vegas yet, so we'll see.
And Todd Lewicki up in Seattle was on a radio show on Monday and basically said, hey, don't be surprised if an NBA team is coming sooner than later. He's making a lot of hints that the Supersonics could be back sooner than later.
Okay.
We talked about NBA expansion.
Yeah.
And obviously he would know he's the ones trying to bring it there. So some pretty bold statements that he made to Softy up there on KJR in Seattle about at least an announcement coming in a relatively short time. So more expansion news.
And your number one when non-social media news turns into news, Justin Fields unfollows the Chicago Bears on Instagram. He begins following Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts.
Sounds like.
And now the Vegas odds have him as a minus money, minus 130 favorite to be the next starting quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, we know this is the big domino to fall in the NFL draft. Will they or won't they? And they were playing it pretty close to the chest, but it sure feels like at this point that everyone and their mother believes that Justin Fields will be playing somewhere else. Chicago is going to try to continue to play this close to their vest to try to drive up the price. You know, Pittsburgh involved in this. Could Denver be involved in this? Could Atlanta be involved in this? My guess is they probably get a second, maybe a conditional one, depending on how he plays. And then it looks like Caleb Williams. Everything you're hearing is Caleb Williams goes one and Justin Fields plays somewhere else, but we shall see.
The Hot 5 at 5 is brought to you by Victor Rico's Mexican Food, home of the most popular burrito in Oregon. You can visit them at victorricos.com. Coming up next, I want to talk about that quarterback carousel. It appears that we do have that first domino. Who needs a QB? Who's available? What does the landscape look like? And is there anything that we can possibly predict out of it? It feels like the gears are about to start turning. That's coming up next on Primetime on 1080 The Fan. news, and I am still, I guess, Suk, taken aback a little bit when the thing that leads or breaks the news is the passive-aggressive unfollowing of a franchise.
Yeah,
the fact that, like, that's the news signal that stuff's about to go down.
100%.
And it's so strange.
It really is. But we're living in a world of social media where these kids,
I get it. It just feels weird.
They're raised on. Yeah, you see it all the time. And my favorite is like then they get mad when people, like, they unfollow and they erase all forms of the team, and then someone asks them about it, and then they get all butthurt. I call that the LeBron. Yeah. When they get all pissed that someone asked them about it, like, what are you talking about? Like,
By the way,
you removed all mentions of your team. I don't know what you're talking about.
By the way, did you see the LeBron Q&A over the weekend when he was asked about if next year is your final season, do you think you'll have one of those farewell tours?
Oh,
and he said, I've never really been about getting that much attention. I'm kind of 50-50 on that.
Yeah,
Do you believe that for a second?
I didn't see the clip, but I saw the quote. Yeah, he said he wasn't certain because he wasn't comfortable with the attention.
Right.
You have chosen one tattooed on your back, dumbass. God, if someone breathes on you, you fall down for 10 minutes. Like, and I love LeBron. Like, LeBron's amazing. I'm not a LeBron hater, but my God, you don't like attention? Okay.
Uh-huh. Well, anyhow, we'll kick it back over to the NFL, but we have the unfollowing of the Chicago Bears from Justin Fields, and now all signs are pointing to the Georgia boy going back home, at least to the area that he grew up in, to be the quarterback of the franchise he grew up rooting for. Interestingly, someone pointed out on the text line last week when there were first rumblings of either Fields or maybe Russell Wilson going to Pittsburgh, that how welcoming would Georgia or would Atlanta be of Fields, who left the University of Georgia? But I think if he can play QB in the NFL, they'll be just fine.
No one cares.
Of course not.
You think Falcon fans are going to care if Justin Fields goes down there and actually can get the ball to Drake London or Pitts?
And that's not the real story here. The real story is what happens in the quarterback landscape of the NFL. Because now it seems like we probably have our first two moves. Yeah. We see Fields to the Falcons, which is the signal that it's also going to be Caleb Williams to the Bears.
Yeah. And so then the dominoes can start going off of that, because you think about it, we still need a landing spot, obviously, because there's lots of quarterback questions, right? So with the Fields one answered, what happens with Baker Mayfield? Mm-hmm. I'm assuming Tampa is going to keep him and pay him. Obviously, you can, the franchise tag and all that, but they're going to do Antonio Winfield, so he's not going to be franchise tagged. So what does Baker get? I'm assuming that Tampa can't do any better than that, and they're going to bring him back. Arizona with a decision on Kyler Murray, Kirk Cousins, who's the other one? Tannehill. I mean, there's a couple other guys that are kind of up in the air. Uh-huh. But you look at the top of the draft, if we're going to assume that Caleb Williams goes 1, 2, and 3 will probably be quarterbacks. Because you look at Washington and you look at New England, that you're probably going to get Drake May or Jaden Daniels. I've seen a lot of Jaden Daniels to Washington. Sure. And then you're sitting there at Arizona at 4. Do you get a run? Because Arizona more than likely doesn't get rid of Kyler Murray.
It sounds like they want to see if Kyler can do this.
Well, and Kyler, just the dead cap hit on him would be enormous. And then the Chargers don't need one.
Right.
And then you get to the Giants. What do they do with Daniel Jones? And then you get to Tennessee, and they've got Will Levis. You think that they're going to give Levis a little bit of time. And then you get to Atlanta, who probably has Justin Fields, and then Chicago, and then the Jets, that doesn't need a quarterback. So this is where it gets interesting, is there's probably 5 first-round quarterbacks if you're going to take Nix and you're going to take Penix, right? So if we go 1, 2, 3 quarterback, there's a lot of potential there for trades at that point if you see some people that feel the need to want to move up, or do one of those teams land more of a veteran quarterback, a Cousins.
And is he the best out there, in your opinion, of the guys who are available potentially as a free agent?
I would assume so. I mean, if Baker's out there, Baker doesn't have the injury history. Doesn't sound like Tua's going to go anywhere in Miami. They're going to hold on to him. But I'm interested to see Tua about what they get paid. Baker Mayfield had a good year.
He did.
And Tua had a good year. Daniel Jones gets $43 million. I would assume it starts there. And I like Baker, and I like Cousins, and I like Tua. What I don't like him at is $48 million. And if Daniel Jones is sitting there at 43, I would love Baker Mayfield, and I would love Tua, and I would love Cousins at 30 to 35. Do they take 30, 35? Is there a market out there for them at 40? That's what I didn't understand about the Daniel Jones thing. who is giving Daniel Jones $40 million?
They bid against themselves on that one. I didn't understand that at all.
Yeah, it's very confusing to me. And we forgot to mention Russell Wilson's out there too. That Russ is going to end up somewhere as well.
So does this mean Russ Pittsburgh?
That seems to make sense because
that seems like a fit.
If Fields to Pittsburgh, because that was kind of one that people were pushing, but now obviously Atlanta is now people are like, oh, Atlanta. If that doesn't work out, then Fields to Pittsburgh's in play. But if it does, then yeah, it makes sense. I don't think Pittsburgh is going to go ahead with Kenny Pickett, and I don't think Pittsburgh is in the market to go young.
Right.
You know, I don't think if you're Pittsburgh, because they draft like 20th.
Yeah.
You could make the argument that Penix or Nix would be there at 20. You'd probably feel better about moving up in the draft. You willing to move up and get draft capital up to draft Penix or Nix?
McCarthy, maybe?
Yeah, McCarthy's another one.
Yeah, he's a guy I've seen thrown out there, even in the top half of the draft.
Mel
McCarthy.
Kiper had him in his top 10.
I saw him at 8 to the Falcons.
Boy, I'll tell you what, it's a ballsy move because
I would not want him to be my franchise QB.
He's one of those guys that you're betting on that he played in a system that held him back. And that he'll blossom at the next level. I think he would be harder to evaluate than just about any of those other quarterbacks. Yeah, you could get 6 first-round quarterbacks. So if you're at Pittsburgh, are you willing to roll the dice and go young, or do you roll the dice on Russ? But yeah, it feels like if Fields goes, Baker, Russ, and Cousins would be the 3 veteran guys if Mayfield can't work something out with Tampa that are all. Russ, you see what he has left in the tank, but Mayfield and Cousins, especially Cousins coming off a bad injury, when healthy, every one of those guys is a top 14, 15 quarterback in the league, right in there.
Yep.
So for a team like Pittsburgh, it would make a lot of sense.
And then the other thing I saw that I'm curious if you agree with, because obviously New England needs a quarterback, and I wish I could give it credit to whoever it was, but the analyst was evaluating New England and their draft spot, saying that New England as a franchise right now is a whole lot closer to Carolina than they are to Houston as far as like needing a quarterback in last year's draft.
Yes.
And that their roster may not be ready for a rookie quarterback because they might not have the pieces yet. Is it possible that they may try to go with a vet? And if so, does that, allow one of those top quarterbacks to fall down the rankings? And I was just interested in the person was kind of saying that New England's not New England anymore. They don't have, the cupboard's kind of bare, and it doesn't have the aura. Like they need more than just the QB.
Well, if you're New England, you have to make it, and this is where you just never know what's happening inside an organization. Because you could make a strong case that if I'm Gerard Mayo, I'm the new coach, I go to Robert Kraft. And remember, they did this with San Francisco when they hired Shanahan and Lynch. Mm-hmm. They gave them like 5-year deals and were like, hey man, you're going to get some runway here. Mm-hmm. If I'm Mayo and you're willing to do this, you go to Kraft and be like, hey, you're committed to me, right? We're not doing this one and done Raheem Morris crap, right? I'm here.
And I don't think Kraft wants to do that.
I wouldn't imagine. He seems like, and by all accounts, he's one of the best owners in the NFL.
And by all accounts, they've been getting Mayo ready for this job.
Yes. So if New England were and it may not be popular amongst fans in New England, but if Daniels and Caleb Williams go 1-2, and you're sitting there with Drake May and you're New England, there is a real element to, can you get a couple ones for someone to move up into the 3rd spot and take Drake May?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, you move down, and I wouldn't even necessarily bring in a veteran. If you do bring in a veteran, you don't bring in a good one.
You don't have to bring in Cousins.
No.
Yeah.
Because New England's not ready for a bridge quarterback either. Mm-mm. Pittsburgh's ready for a bridge quarterback.
Yes.
Tampa was ready for a bridge quarterback, right? Like Kirk Cousins. If Kirk Cousins was healthy, that's where I'd go if I were Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Baker and Kirk can win you playoff games.
Absolutely. And that was a roster that got close to the playoffs again last year.
Yes. So if you're New England, probably the best thing for you, if you don't believe that Drake May is the guy, but I'll go to my grave. If you think Drake May or Jaden Daniels, who's ever there at 3, if you think they are a franchise,
you got to go get him.
You don't give 2 S's about what's around. Draft him.
Yeah, you need to make sure he doesn't go to the next franchise.
Yes.
Yeah,
if you think you're as a franchise guy, see Pat Mahomes in Kansas City, they had Alex Smith, and it was like, nope, we're going to trade up because we think this is the guy. If you ever think that there is a franchise quarterback, you pull the trigger. If you look at Drake May and you're like, yeah, we like him, but there's nothing special about him. Move down, stick with Mac Jones,
Get more capital. Let someone else take the guy. Yeah.
Take another hit and accept the fact that you're going to kick rocks for the next year or two, and you keep going. But that takes patience. Tanking works. It does.
Yep. It does.
Tanking works. Chicago has kind of done this, and Fields hasn't been very good, and they've traded back, and they've got all this draft capital, and they've got a chance to walk away with now. Let's say they get another one for Justin Fields. They have a chance to walk away with Caleb Williams. Let's say you probably don't get Marvin Harrison Jr. at 9, but maybe Neighbors
or Odunze.
Yeah. To go along with DJ Moore. And then you get another first-round pick or a late second, and you draft another starter with that. This is how you build. In Chicago kind of took their lumps. And so if you're New England and you're patient, you don't have to draft a quarterback at 3 if you aren't in love with him.
Yeah.
It's just that most franchises, most coaches, most GMs never feel comfortable doing that. See Carolina, like in Frank Reich. But good organizations give their coaches and gives their GM leeway to kind of go through this and acquire picks and wait until you get a quarterback that you're really in love with. But make no mistake, in the NFL, if you think a guy is a franchise quarterback, you do whatever you can to get your hands on him. And don't ever listen to anyone that says that they're an expert in the draft when it comes to quarterbacks, because you don't know what someone thinks of a quarterback in a room.
Right.
Because that's all that matters.
Yep.
And again, go back to Pat Mahomes, where everyone was like, why the hell is Kansas City moving up to take him?
Numbers weren't that good. Didn't win that many games. They had a reason.
When you see a guy, you go out and you get him and you pull the trigger and hope that your evaluation is right. Because if you're wrong, you look like an ass clown. If you're wrong, you end up with Mitch Trubisky. If you're wrong, you end up with Jake Locker. On and on and on. But when you're right and you end up with CJ Stroud, look at Carolina right now. They're sitting there with Bryce Young and Houston sitting there with CJ Stroud. One was right, one was wrong.
Yep, absolutely.
And it tips. Those two franchises couldn't be on different trajectories.
And they looked like they were parallels the year before.
They both were crappy franchises that people were like, and one made a great hire as a coach, and one made a great pick at quarterback, and the other one fired their coach, and they've got what appears to be maybe the worst number one quarterback we've seen. It's early. This may be, if this is what it is going forward from Bryce Young, not only is this potentially going to be the worst number one pick we've seen since like Jamarcus Russell, this may set back the Short Kings for years.
Well, they also didn't help him at all.
No, but when you draft someone small and it fails, and already, I mean, there are some guys that will go to their grave saying, I won't draft a quarterback under 6 foot, period, end of story. I don't care. I'm not taking him. And all it takes is one to be like, oh, this is the exception, and him for being a bust for the rest of the NFL to look at and be like, yeah, remember I was really set in my not drafting 5'9", 5'10" skinny quarterbacks. Bryce Young's got the ability to set back the Short Kings for years and years and years, unless he can figure something out, because it's bad. This is as bad of a early quarterback as we've seen in a long, long time.
Well, we need to move over to the college game briefly, because Rick Pitino threw his team under the bus, and then he threw some players under the bus, and then he backed the bus up, and he rolled over him again. Kidding. That's coming up next, but first, Will with SportsCenter.
great a-hole coach moves of all time.
No, I'm not talking about myself. I'm quoting the words of Rick Pitino. This is the most unenjoyable experience of my life, he said after getting a job back in Division I college basketball after all the things that he's been through. Rick Pitino, if you're not aware, is the head coach at St. John's University. They have not been great this season. They blew a 19-point lead over the weekend and to Seton Hall and lost that game. And old Rick didn't hold back after that one.
No, this is one of the great a-hole rants in coach history. This is Mike Leach, Bill Parcells type stuff. I absolutely hate this crap.
So I'm going to pick and choose a couple excerpts because it went on for a while, and I know that SportsCenter cut it up, but there are a couple things in there I want to include that I think are really indicative of kind of the a-holery that you talk about. But first he says, do we have crappy facilities? And he didn't use the word crappy. So yes, we do, but we're doing something about it. But that's not the reason we're losing. Having crappy facilities has nothing to do with guarding. Joel's slow laterally. He's not fast on the court. Chris Ledlum is slow laterally. Sean Conway is slow laterally. Brady Dunlap is physically weak. Drissa is slow laterally. He's basically calling out players by name. And then he says he goes on to say, we kind of lost this season the way we recruited. We recruited to the antithesis of the way that I coach. It's a good group. They try hard, but they're just not very tough. It's not the job. You could be at Missouri and recruit slow players. Believe me, it's not St. John's. So he basically
that's pathetic.
Goes out and says, I assembled this team of nice guys, but they suck at basketball, essentially.
To go out and this is like, it used to piss me off when Leach did this, but at least he just said O-line.
Sure.
Like he is literally
individual players.
Literally calling. If I was one of those players, dude, I'd be like, F you. Welcome to the transfer portal. What a bunch of crap. And this is the part that bothers me about Rick Pitino and coaches like this. They demand accountability out of everyone but themselves. Like it's in no way this is your fault, Rick. No, this is all your players. Every one of your players that you recruited sucks ass. Like this is where we're at. It's just for someone like Rick Pitino, a Hall of Fame legendary coach, to drop this crap, and it gets worse when he talks about it being the worst job he's ever had. Yep. Someone asked him if he regrets taking the job at St. John's. He's like, no, this isn't St. John's. This is about my team.
Yeah.
Oh, way to be an expert motivator. This absolute garbage. You're making how many millions?
And then he says, we had to put the team together at the last second and we will never, ever do that again. Well, whose fault is that, Rick? That's not on the guys that you brought in.
This is the Deion Sanders crap, right? In the middle of your season when you talk about, my O-line sucks, don't worry, I'll get a new one. It's just that, I don't know. It's just such a classless sort of thing. There's a democratic way to go about this if you want to talk. And what good does that do? What good does that do to go in front of the media and just rip your team to shreds and basically say that it's not effort, they're just slow? And they're not good?
I have an answer for you, Jason. And this is even maybe more amazing than the initial comments, because he was asked yesterday. Those comments came on Sunday after his loss. He was asked on Monday about those comments and if he regretted any of that. And he said, I was pointing out exactly in a monotone voice why we lost. I am not always calm, and certainly not when I rip someone. I was not ripping anybody. Sometimes I want my players to hear my words and read my words. That was my intention Sunday. So he basically says, yeah, I was calling those guys out and I wanted them to hear me. Why can't you go tell them then, Rick? Why do you have to air them out in front of the whole country?
I'm a little sensitive to this because my offensive line coach, who's dead now, I don't want anyone to die. He was the worst human being that I ever encountered in coaching. This is the same thing. Like when I was battling neck problems. I had a fun case of spinal stenosis, a narrowing of the spinal column, and I would go numb from getting hit. And so they would take painkillers and numbers and shoot them into my neck, which was real fun, until they decided that after multiple ones of those that I shouldn't do that anymore because it could be causing paralysis. So I was getting sent to, and I've told the story, I was on my way to practice and they were like, no, you need to go. We're going to send you need to get an MRI on your neck. We're worried about that this could be something serious, like potentially career ending, like life altering type stuff. And my offensive line coach stopped me in the hallway on my way to get undressed to go get an MRI. I've never been more nervous in my life. And he called me a coward. He called me a bitch. and said that I would never play again because I'm going to let them do this, and I'm letting everyone down. And if I want to be a P word, just go ahead and let them do this because I don't deserve to play.
God.
And I ended up playing the rest of that year. And they weren't allowing me to take any more injections. So I played the rest of the year in just horrific pain. And at the end of the season, he came up to me and said how proud he was of me. And he did that because he knew it would motivate me to suck it up and want to play hard.
What a great coach.
And my response to him was, F you. And I was so happy when he got his ass fired at the end of the year. That's the sort of really? So you go in front of media, you go in front of everybody, and you rip your team to shreds, and you say that they're slow and they're unathletic, and I didn't want them.
And I'm not necessarily against guys ripping their team, but it's the individual call-outs that I think are completely bogus. For guys that are busting their ass for you, that signed up to play for you, and you gave them the opportunity, and now you're saying it's their fault for not being... he's blaming their physical abilities. What can they do about that?
They're also kids.
Yeah.
Like, it would still be poor form, but
you could do that to an NBA player, yes.
Right. If Doc Rivers went out and he blamed Giannis, blamed Dame, said Brooke Lopez was slow, that's one thing. Sure. Those guys are making millions. You start ripping on kids that are anywhere from 18 to 22.
I just have no respect for you.
Well, it's poor form, and it's being a bully, and you know you can do it. You know that you're not really going to get in trouble, because what's St. John's going to do? Are they going to fire Rick Pitino? No, because that's the only way to get him in.
This is why college coaches to me are worse than any pro coach, because you can't get away with this crap in the pros. But in college, when you got your thumb over them, you can do this crap, which is why, even though everyone hates NIL and like the transfer portal and all this, and I get it, it's made for a weird, awkward world. In a lot of ways, I love it because it gives dumbasses like this, it gives them some accountability.
Well, and it gives players who are under the thumb of a dumbass like this another chance.
You want to be an ass, and you want to be, and maybe dudes just want to sign up and go play for Rick Pitino. And it doesn't matter. Maybe he'll get a new group of people. You pay him enough with NIL and all that. But I love the fact that kids aren't beholden anymore to this. Like, you just, I would hope that the days of being an over the top, what do you say, like dictator bully,
Gret ass, and
yeah, it's like,
but even beyond that,
coaches all the time be like, man, it sucks. I have to recruit my own team, and I get, in some ways that does suck. Like that every year you have to recruit your own players. But at the same time,
that's the job now, man.
That's the job. And does it suck for you because you actually have to have some accountability and you have to make it an environment that your kids actually want to be at? Because there's one thing we always say, oh, a kid will leave to take more money. Well, I'm sure there's an element to that. But also, if you're an ass and it's not an enjoyable experience, that kid does have the ability to go somewhere else. And so I do think in some ways it forces coaches to be mindful of how they treat their players. And if ultimately that leads to coaches like Dan Lanning or whoever, that you can be tough. Nick Saban, you can be tough. You can be a disciplinarian, but you can't be Rick Pitino.
Yep.
You can't, not in this day and age. I have no respect. I have no respect for comments like this when you're literally calling guys out and saying that they're slow, you didn't want them, and they're unathletic. I have a problem when Deion Sanders does it. I have a problem when Mike Leach did it. Mike Leach called Dylan Johnson, that running back from Washington that played the entire, basically this season on one leg.
Yeah.
Who was
as a beast, by the way.
That dude put the amount of effort and pain that guy played through. Remember, that's the guy that Mike Leach at Mississippi State said was soft and he wanted off the team. Just saying.
Yep.
No, rest in peace, Mike Leach. And I love Mike Leach as a person, but he would do this type of stuff. And if that's your way of motivating, if that's Rick Pitino's way of motivating, get out of the 1950s, Bob Knight. Grow up.
One more story before we get to the club. It's not a priority to me, said the man making almost $700,000 a game. That's next on The Fan. Haven't seen anything on the Vancouver Ford text line about this just yet, but I did tease this for Souk earlier. We got a kind of a dealer's choice of stories. What is crossing the line for vengeance from an Airbnb host? What illicit activities shut down a Northern California library? And the OnlyFans-related manhunt in Russia? Those are the things that we can get into in the club.
So many good things. The Airbnb horror stories are like, that stuff is spooky.
Well, this one led to a lawsuit and potentially broke up a marriage. So we'll get to that. But first, I want to go over to baseball. I saw this story this morning. It's spring training. They were interviewing all the superstars as they check into camp. Anthony Rendon got a nice fat contract from the Angels after winning the World Series with the Nationals a few years back. He's been a guy who's been injured a lot. He didn't have a good season last year. And he was asked this morning about the notion that he had considered retiring. And for context, I'll give the whole Q&A here, but they asked him, what's your mindset right now? And he says, my enthusiasm's been the same since I got drafted. I was actually deleting old emails as my storage was filling up. So I'm going back through and I emailed myself a pros and cons about why I wanted to stay in the game. This was 10 years ago in 2014. My thought process of the game hasn't changed since then, and I kept making it this long. So he doesn't really answer the question, but they said, well, how does your pro and con list compare? He said, it's a lot different. I'm married now. I have 4 kids now. My priorities have changed since I was in my 20s. So definitely my perspective on baseball has been more skewed. Then the reporter asks, is it a top priority for you? He says, it's never been a top priority for me. This is a job. I do this to make a living. My faith and my family come first before this job. So those things, if those things come before it, if those things don't come before it, I'm leaving. And they said, is it a priority? Baseball, that is. He says,
trying to find something.
Sure, it's a priority because it's my job. I'm here, aren't I? They said, do you want to be here? His response, I don't want to be talking to you guys at 7 a.m. or whatever time it is. They said, well, do you want to be here playing baseball for the Angels? And he says, I've answered your question. Why do you keep picking at it? And he hasn't even answered the question.
They owe him, by the way, $38 million for, I think, 3 or 4 more years.
And so he is a guy who...
He's got 3 years left. And at $38 million per, he ain't going anywhere. He may not like it. He may not make it a priority, but you know what he does like? $38 million a year.
And listen, I get that throughout sports, even now collegiate sports with NIL, but especially in pro sports, there are some guys who are ridiculously talented and don't really have a love or passion for the game. That does happen. We have seen that. It's not super common. Most people just completely dedicate themselves to it and happen to like it a little bit or have some passion for it. Yeah. Maybe he did at one point and has lost that a little bit since. But like, you know, Ricky Williams said, like, I'm great at playing football and running a football, but like, it's not my favorite thing. I don't love it. Like there've been guys like that.
Manny Ramirez said that once. Yeah. It was Manny that said, like, win or lose, basically, I'll be fine.
But I guess over the last 3 years, he's only been averaging playing about 58 games a year, Rendon has. And it's been coming out to him earning a little less than $700,000 per game he plays. Last year, he hit 2 home runs for the Angels before they had to shut him down. It's not going especially well. I know fans have a problem with this. How do you sit on the guys who are like, you know, that's just my job, it's not my top priority?
I mean, again, this is a little bit to me like the All-Star, game conversation we have. How do you
make a guy care?
How do you make a guy care that doesn't care? Like, his contract is guaranteed. This is why some people hate guaranteed contracts, and I get it. But you gave him $38 million a year for the last. I mean, he's been making this for. Oh gosh, yeah. What the last
3 or 4 years? It was like a 7-year deal that he signed.
Yeah, for the last. Yeah, they signed him to a $200+ million contract.
I think it was $215 over 7.
7 years, $245.
Oh, $245 over 7. There you go.
They gave him $245 million. What are you going to do if you give someone $240? This is the dangerous part about any sport. When you give a guy $245 million, and we've talked about this on the program. No matter what job it is, let's say you work at McDonald's, and you're a lawyer, you're a sports radio host, you're a teacher, all of those things, right? And someone comes and gives you $35 million. And it's yours no matter what. And all you got to do is show up to work. That's it. Show up to McDonald's every day and you make your fries, you mop the floor, we work the fryer later.
And you don't have to go above and beyond. You don't have to put in extra work. You don't have to watch film.
You just show up. You show up and you get $35 million. Whether you move all the McNuggets out or whether you sell no McNuggets, it's $35 million. How many people performance would go up and how many people's performance would go down?
Most would go down.
Well, and this is so we like to believe in athletics. that the pride and the competitive spirit, kicks in. And for a lot of it, it does. But when you're Randone and you're looking at the end of your career, because he'll be 37 when this is done. He ain't signing another one. This happens quite a bit to people. And I don't think it's a Rendon problem. I don't think it's a baseball problem. I just think it's a person problem. Because he wouldn't have done this at 26.
No.
He wouldn't have done it at 27 because he didn't have $300 million sitting in the bank.
Yeah.
But when you give someone that money, this is like, I hate that Mamba mentality. That drives me crazy. Mamba mentality is just a reason to, like, you can be an a-hole and be like, oh, I got that Mamba mentality. But there is an element to, if you're motivated like Kobe, or you're motivated like Michael or LeBron or someone like that, that's what drives you. You just want to rip someone's heart out. I think there's way more people like Rendon and like Randy Moss. I'm trying to think of other ones that come to mind. Manny Ramirez. I think there's more of those guys than there are the Michaels and the Kobes and like Bryce Harper. I think is one of these, like, where you'll do anything. Like you'll win no matter what the cost. So, I mean, no one wants to hear it because, we have this idea of, well, if I had $35 million
if someone was paying me that, you better believe I'd bust my ass. Yeah.
Well, again, I ask.
Some don't.
I ask, if you were doing your job and someone came to you tomorrow and said, here's $35 million, and it doesn't matter how well you do your job, I think the vast majority of people get worse. They don't get better. And sports is no different in that. It's crappy for the fan. It's like, if you're an Angels fan, already your team sucks, and you've had 2 MVPs, you've had 2 of the best players in baseball for years, and you still suck. And going into this year that you're going to suck even worse. And a guy that you're paying that much money to just comes out and is like, it stinks.
Meanwhile, you've got Trout over there saying, I don't want him to trade me. I'd like management to go make a big splash, but if they trade me, there's nothing I can do.
Trout, things
are not going well over there in Anaheim.
No one would blame Mike Trout. If
No.
He just was like, yeah, it's time to hit the bricks. So no fans like to hear this, but unfortunately, I think there's more athletes like this than we realize.
Well, it's time to shut down the sports portion of the program, and we're going to move on to the club next, where we will discuss waging war via Airbnb, a Ukrainian-based OnlyFans, or a Ukrainian-Russian OnlyFans manhunt, and a library shut down for illicit activity. That's all coming up next in the club. Interesting, okay.
You got Lady Gaga on set.
Right.
It's weird to think about Beyonce being in that role. Lady Gaga was great, but I'm
It's
sure
not that I don't think she could have done it, but because I have seen that movie
Right.
and thought it was so good, it's hard to imagine someone else in it.
it's like when you hear Chris Farley doing Shrek.
Right.
Like he was like 3/4 of the way done with Shrek when he died.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, so you can go back. You can see, you can find on YouTube. There you can see Shrek and the rough animation with Chris Farley, and it's odd.
I bet.
Because it's not an accent. It sounds like Chris Farley. It's so weird. So yeah, to think about Beyonce being in Star Is Born, which is a great movie. But that wasn't what was weird. He said that when he went over to Beyonce's house, Jay-Z was just sitting on the couch watching Judge Judy. And that stuff fascinates me. I am fascinated by uber famous rich people doing
Normal
seemingly
things.
normal things. Like Jay-Z is like, it doesn't get much bigger than Jay-Z, right? He's worth $1 billion, one of the most influential musicians of all time. And I'm sure that Beyonce and Jay-Z's house is like the most ridiculous.
Lavish.
Yeah, I can't even fathom what that thing looks like. So you're Bradley Cooper, who's a big star in his own right, but he's not Beyonce, he's not Jay-Z.
For sure.
So you go over there and you're talking to Beyonce, hey, I got this role, you're interested in it. And you roll in there and you walk into their grandiose, I'm sure living room or whatnot. And Jay-Z's like on the couch, like with his feet up, and he's like watching Judge Judy. That is so weird to me to think that that's what he does on a Wednesday afternoon is just watch Judge Judy.
And then it makes me wonder, well, does he do that every afternoon at 3 o'clock when it's on, or did he just happen to not have anything to do on this day at this
She is
time?
appointment television. I mean, it
who's
doesn't get better than Judge Judy.
You know who's a huge Judge Judy fan and even showed up in the audience of a Judge Judy taping? Los Angeles Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh.
Harbaugh's
Loves.
really?
Back when he was the Niners head coach, he says, I love the way that she adjudicates things and she rules swiftly and fairly. And it became such a viral thing that they got him and his dad tickets to go sit for a Judge Judy taping.
Who's got it better than us?
Nobody.
Judge Judy does. Think about that. Imagine going over to Harbaugh's house. And you're like, hey, Jim, what's going on? It's like, nothing, just going to watch some Judge Judy. You want to sit down? Like that is so weird. I've always been fascinated by, and it's not the same thing, but celebrities, but also like evil people. Like I'm always fascinated with the idea of like Hitler taking a crap. Like,
Or like having a clogged toilet and having to figure out how to deal with it.
yeah, that's like the most evil man to ever live. And yeah, like at one point, like he had the idea of like Hitler waking up and being like, ooh, and like doing that shuffle run that we've all had to do. You're like, oh boy, yeah, it's the sauerkraut. Yeah, like that stuff is so weird to me. I have my good buddy that's in the music business. He was involved in the Dr. Dre Eminem halftime show.
Okay.
And so I called him once, and I was like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, I'm getting ready to walk into a meeting. And I was like, no big deal. Yeah, I just was like, I'll call you back later. And he's like, yeah. And he just kind of slipped it in there. He it's kind of sly. He's like, hey, he was at Dr. Dre's house. And I try not to bother him. I try not to be like the Chris Farley show, because he's around these people. And I don't want to be like, remember that time you went to Dr. Dre's house? But like, I do. I kind of want to. And he's like one of my dearest friends. And I know I could.
Yeah.
But I try not to, because I'm sure he gets that nonstop. But I was like,
So what's he like?
yeah, it's like, what's happening at Dr. Dre's house? And like, I think the only thing he said was like, you can't comprehend it. It's Tom Brady's old house.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the old Tom Brady Giselle house in California with like the Batmobile, or the Bat Cave, like with the cars and all that. That's Dr. Dre's house.
I did not know that.
And I desperately wanted to just pepper him questions about Dr. Dre's house. And like, when you went over, was he like in sweatpants, or again, was he watching Judge Judy? No, it's just weird to think about, Like someone said, yeah, fascinated, like Vancouver 4 text line, fascinated that Kim Jong-un and like Uday Hussein watched Disney films.
Yeah.
I guess they were both big Disney fans.
Yeah.
But one still is.
Because they were kids once, and and then they like became fans, and it's like, yeah, imagine like what if a dictator like loves Curb Your Enthusiasm or something like that? I mean, it's just it's so strange to think of I don't know, people in high places, and also of evil doing, like just doing normal stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I get that's the time, but like People magazine did that for years. Stars, they're just like us, and
I think they still do. It's like, look, they go out and drop their ice cream cones, and like it's basically random paparazzi shots that show up there. But
and I don't care what Alyssa Milano's doing, but when you get to a certain level,
Or I even think
She's in some deep stuff right now, buddy.
Oh yeah, she's taking some. I don't know.
what's her? Oh, what's it? The traveling baseball thing.
She asked for a GoFundMe to pay for her kid to
Traveling
go play baseball, and then she bought Super Bowl tickets like real close and brought him.
And took her kid. Yeah.
that's tough.
I don't even know who she is. Like, to me, she's famous for political stuff. I know that she was an actress at some point.
She was like in Who's the Boss, and she was like one of those.
A child star.
If you were our age, like she was like one of your first crushes.
Because she was like a hot teen when we were teens, kind of a deal.
She's your guys' is Selena Gomez.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
She's not
Miley Cyrus.
She's not that now. Miley Cyrus is actually talented. Melissa Milano was never really talented. She was
just a pretty face who started acting early.
Yeah. The Megan Fox.
She's talented. How dare you? Don't you dare attack the greatness.
The best thing that Megan Fox ever did was lean over the hood of the car in
Transformers.
No, she stopped the Decepticons twice.
See, Will follows the plot. He's there for the plot.
That's like Alyssa Milano. She was like in Charmed in like some bad movies with like Marky Mark. But she was a hot, and now she's like an ex-hot, and yeah, she's raising money, and that even gets me on a whole other thing. I'm fascinated at the fundraisers for travel like teams. That blows me away, and I get it. Like, little league teams, it's like, oh, send our boys to Hershey, Pennsylvania, but I'm not gonna lie, that's a tough ask for you asking me to send your kid.
Yeah. And it's
who's like 10.
And I don't think it was like hey, we won our district and we're going to this place we didn't expect. It's like, I think it's like the fun to travel ball team.
I don't know, man. If that's where everyone wants to donate their money, more power to you. And that's one thing, like, I guess I feel like it's like an inner city school, like Snoop Dogg, it has that Snoop League where like they're like really underprivileged kids.
Yeah,
like
Anthony Thomas came up in that league.
Right, those kids have never been on an airplane and all that. But if you're asking me to donate so the kids from Clackamas or West Lynn, if you want me to donate so that your kid can go play baseball in New York City, you're gonna have a hard time getting me to open up the purse strings on that one. I don't mind donating to a good cause. It's just that cause of your kid going to play Little League sports. Well, I'll tell you what, that is like 872 down the list of things that I would like to spend my money on.
Nope.
You know what I could take that $100 is go take my kids to go do something fun. Yeah. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Well, we can start in Memphis, we can start in Russia, we can start in Antioch, but we will do that next when the club continues for some illicit activities on the Fan.
Yeah. The home of Dirt and Spray.
Someone says, Vancouver Ford text line, I need to start my donate to Sook's illicit activity Camus OnlyFans fund. Exactly. What if I just put up a fund and was like, I would like to do nefarious things. I promise that nothing productive is going to come out of this, but, there'll be some good stories. Like, how is that anything? Like, the amount of stuff that people donate to is fascinating. Of all the worthy causes out there, just people just donate to the strangest things, and you don't need a lot of money if you get enough people. It's like someone gets fired from their job for being like a giant a-hole, but then like one segment of the country like raises like $800,000 for them. They're like,
yeah, they got canceled. Screw everybody else. Well, let's start with OnlyFans since you brought it up. This also happens to be the same story that involves a manhunt out of Russia. So it starts with up tops, Jason.
Well, doesn't everything start with up tops?
A topless Ukrainian OnlyFans model flashed those up tops in front of St. Basil's Cathedral in Red Square in 2021.
Oh, yeah, you can't do that.
Cannot do that.
No.
And apparently those photos were, I guess, buried while they investigated. The model, 24-year-old Lolita Bogdanova, and it says that essentially she signed an agreement saying she could not leave Russia until the matter could be investigated. But now the images have been posted on her Instagram, and they're like, well, she's out of Russia then, because if she was still there,
yeah,
it's believed that she's fled to the U.S.
Oh, because she flashed?
Because, so they wanted to either prosecute her. Russia put her on their most wanted list because of essentially desecrating this cathedral, and the fact that these photos are now back out there.
Somewhere Tucker Carlson is like, yeah, Russia's great.
The woman who performs on OnlyFans as Lola Bunny apologized to anyone who was offended when the photos were originally released, claiming that they were not uploaded by her.
Boy, I'm looking here. First off, she's a hot.
She is a hot.
Shocker.
Yeah. Well, sometimes only model fans, it's like really? You getting people to pay it?
Everyone is into their own thing.
Everyone's into their own thing.
People buy jars of farts.
Yeah, like bathwater and all that.
So weird.
But imagine never being able to go home because you flashed your bumpers in front of a church.
It says that Russia's international manhunt for Bogdanova comes as hardline Kremlin leaders have launched a new wave of charges against enemies or deviants of Russia's new, more conservative orthodoxy.
That's
so
right.
basically, there's a new.
They're cracking down on quote debauchery.
Yeah, they don't want to be quite so progressive anymore. It seems they're going back to their more conservative ways, and flashing those up tops in front of St. Basil's, not on the list of okay things to do.
The best part is half of our country right now is like, yeah, we need more of this. It's just
I'm not going to tell her to stop.
hard line. Flash your up tops. Go to prison.
The article mentions, meanwhile, OnlyFans has taken an anti-war stance against Russia, and so essentially they're advocating for Lola Bunny here.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm putting Russia right at the top of the list. I have like a 10 country, there's no reason to ever go there. Let me just go ahead and, I'm not going to say Russia's number one. There's still some places in the Middle East and Africa that are probably going to hit that. But I'll tell you what, Russia's climbing that, they're climbing that list. The entire time I was in Russia, I'd be terrified. I'd be terrified of doing something, saying something. That's why I see all these people that are always like, they're like protesting this or protesting that. You might want to go to those places and see how well you do.
Yeah.
They get a lot of these college kids that, and God bless you, you want to be activists and you feel like you're out there for some sort of social justice. Just be aware that a lot of the places that you're in support of wouldn't necessarily be in support of you. You're 20-something, gender fluid, shaved head, purple mohawk, multiple piercings, all that. Like, that really wouldn't fly in a lot of these places that you're a big fan of. They may actually, I don't know, throw you in prison or, I don't know, murder you. So just think about that, like, before you get all gung-ho about yelling and screaming about a place. Like some of the Russian stuff over there, I don't know, just killing dissidents, and that may have just happened over in Russia. Just saying.
Yeah,
Tucker Carlson said it was a utopia. I watched him go to the grocery store.
Yeah, going on the subway there's great. It's way better than New York City.
That's right. There's no vandalism.
Tell political leaders, they get I don't know. Just saying. Just throwing that one out there.
And
I think he had to come out, by the way, and I think he had to do like an oopsie, release a statement being like, yeah, that was...
The article also feels they need to point out that the hunt for Bogdanova came just days after the highly suspicious death of Alexei Navalny.
Yeah.
Not that those would even be related, but basically they weren't afraid to kill him. They won't be afraid to kill her either.
Who would have thought that those would be in the same sentence?
Hey, welcome to the
political
New York Post.
activist dies. Also, OnlyFans model, watch out, you're next.
Yeah, how do we link these stories? But here's the thing. I like that it says Bogdanova apologized to anyone who was offended. Russia, Bogdanova. It was Russia that was offended. They said you can't do that in front of their chapel. You know that it was them. Like, they're offended.
I always
does it offend
wonder-
me? Does it offend Souk? Does it offend you?
Like, is it Russia?
Certainly doesn't.
No, I'm all for it. You know, I'm all about no war, but all the T's. T's, yeah, go T's, no war. I wonder, like, what the general Russian public feels. Because over there, like, you just get put in prison no matter what. Like, they were, the Navalny people were mourning Navalny, just out mourning him. And, dude, the police were rounding people up and giving them the business. And
They can't have the optics of people doing that. Like, it's
"Whoa."
crazy.
Yeah, it's spooky. I just wonder, like, if the average Russian's like, what? Up tops in front of this cathedral, off with their head. Or if they're like the rest of us, they're like, hell yeah, tease. I don't know, because like the only thing you hear over there is from state-run media. So I don't know. Maybe the Russian people are over there are like super cool. I don't know. It's just I find it to be a very terrifying place.
I'm guessing if she got out, she'll be fine. But I don't know. Like, we don't know exactly where she is. We just know that the photos have resurfaced via her Instagram. So I have to imagine she's in a place that seems safe. But
Well, I'll
who
tell you
knows?
what, old Lola, I wouldn't go back.
No, I think if she goes back, that
there-
would be a problem for her.
Yeah, there's an elevator shaft with your name on it.
I don't think I'd go to Europe.
I mean, it depends where. I mean, I don't know how.
I need
in my head, like,
I
how-
need like 3-country border. Like that Putin, it legitimately terrifies me. I feel like
I also need to know
if
how
he-
high of a priority she is on their manhunt list, because this wouldn't seem to be that high. But if she's one of the most wanted, then what lengths do you go to get her back?
I don't know, man. All I know is they're blowing up airplanes. They're shoving people down elevator shafts with their top COVID scientists.
fall out windows.
Fell out of windows. You know, it's like, hey, but subways are clean and groceries apparently very cheap.
It is really funny to think that an OnlyFans model is the #1 most wanted in all of Russia. Like, Putin stays awake at night thinking about how he can find.
And not even
this
someone like
OnlyFans
opposing Putin, someone who's just showing the up tops. As far as I know, she's not speaking politically on anything. She's just like, hey, look at these.
Hey, we're cracking down on debauchery. I would like to increase the debauchery, but what situation isn't better with teas? Find me a situation where a pair of nicely appointed, what have yous doesn't instantly be like, yeah, it's better. Maybe like an anniversary dinner or something. 'Cause then you have to pretend to be disgusted.
Well, unless it's the person you're with.
Well, yeah. But if you're ever in a situation like with the significant other and teas making an appearance and they're not your teas, it's always very tough. Because then you have to be like, this is despicable. Except my gal knows that I'm full of crap and it doesn't matter. She just instantly knows that I'm like, yeah. And then I get yelled at either way, so I might as well embrace it. But we've all been there. We're just like, you're out with your gal and just an absolute dime walks by. Even if the teas aren't out or anything, you just have to be like, it's embarrassing. Some people need that sort of attention. And just in your mind, you're like, oh.
No, I wasn't looking over there. I was looking at the bartender to see if I could get his attention.
You start staring at the ceiling. You're just bending over, trying to tie your shoe, doing anything in your brain. Don't look, don't look, don't look, don't look, don't look.
All right, we'll
As if
move on.
Jason Momoa walked by, they wouldn't stare either.
We'll move on to Memphis, Tennessee. Did the Airbnb guest F around and find out, or did the host cross the line? We'll get to that next, but first, Ortner with SportsCenter.
Now, from the Spirit Mountain Casino.
texts on the Vancouver Ford text line, most of which I cannot read about our friend Lola Bunny. But good on you texters out there. Reminder, you can reach us at the Vancouver Ford text line, 503-8646-FAN. Vancouver Ford, they treat you right before, during, and after the sale. It is time to move over to another story. This one, a dispute between Airbnb user or renter and host.
I like a good feud.
This stems from an incident back in September 2022 from a Memphis house called A Little Bit More Country. A man, Sean Mackey, rented this house for a get-together with old friends from September 9th to September 11th for a total of 4 guests. He said he was also going to have a couple more people come over for dinner. Host said no big deal.
Sure.
Sounds like a fun time, blah, blah, blah. Basically, she said, though, no parties, if it's an automatic fine if the police have to show up for some reason. A lot of your standard boilerplate Airbnb stuff.
Sure.
Also said, I have security cameras outside that I can monitor the number of guests with. I'm just letting you know. I'm not spying on you, but I will check to make sure how many people are there. And which is, you can determine whether how much of that is invasive to his privacy or not. But the listing said it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home that could accommodate up to 12 people a night. So he has 4 people staying there. There's 4 or 5 more coming over for dinner. You're at around 9.
Sure.
And then he sends a message, in the app saying, "Hey, there's actually going to be a couple more people, a few more than I expected, but rest assured, we'll take care of your home." Everything still seems fine. He says only 4 or 5 will be staying overnight. Then just minutes later, the host informed the guy for the first time that he would only be allowed to have 8 guests at the house, even though the listing said you can have 12.
Huh.
And so he's like, okay, well, I'm sorry. I didn't anticipate tripling, what we thought were going to be the 4 friends, but it still says like we could have 12 people here. Yeah. I don't really see why there's the problem. Well, eventually, she receives complaints of disturbances, yelling, profanity in the parking area. She gets messages from people around saying that they're violating the no party rule, etc. So she goes ahead and basically slaps a fine on his account and is like, you broke my rules, you violated the no party rule, you disturbed my neighbors, you brought more people than I said was okay.
I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know if you could slap someone with an Airbnb fine.
So I think that you can if you violate X part of this agreement, we reserve the right to charge this. So she had a thing that said if the police show up, it's $500. That's just how it is.
Okay.
And I didn't know that you could do that, but that was written in there. So apparently, she finds this guy as an extra $960.
Ouch.
And he's like, the place only costs $560 a night for 3 nights. So it's a pretty hefty steep fine.
I would say so, simply for having too many people.
Right. And so
and no damage and anything was done to the house. It was just a matter of there was too many people there.
So she said, she sends him a message, says, "I'm very sorry, but you violated the no party rule, disturbed my neighbors by cursing and yelling in the parking lot and having unauthorized guests. I'm asking you to leave now. You are not allowed to stay. I'm sorry." He says no party's taken place. No one had been yelling or cursing in the parking lot. And basically she tells him, "Don't forget to turn off the lights and lock the door. I wish you safe travels. Get out of here." And so he gets a partial refund for the time that he wasn't staying there, but he's still hit with the fine.
The fine
from her. Well, he's like, I'm not gonna pay this fine because I didn't get to stay, and also these things didn't happen the way that you're saying. He gets so upset about this that he ends up using, or I should say she, the superhost here, ends up using doorbell footage of the renter or the Airbnb user bringing a woman back to the house, and somehow got the information of this guest's wife and sent the photo of him bringing a woman back to the house to the wife because he couldn't collect on his fine.
Did he ruin? He outed the dude.
He said that Mackey refused to pay up, leading to so now he's suing for what he's calling an extortion attempt by the host, saying I'm going to send this to your wife if you don't give me the money.
Wow.
Yeah.
boy.
Now, apparently, the wife got the photo, and the marriage has suffered as a consequence of it.
I would say so. Can you imagine you get divorced and how much that divorce is going to cost you versus the $900?
Yeah.
Sometimes, here's the thing. Sometimes you just have to eat like this is the Reggie Bush thing, right? Remember when Reggie Bush got busted at USC? That dude wanted like $200K that he had apparently given Reggie Bush, and Reggie Bush was like, no. And look what happened. Someone should have just cut that dude a check. If you know that you've got whores coming over to the house, you're a married man and you're knee deep in like coke and whores, you gotta pay that freight. You just have to know. But how sneaky the doorbell cam, the ring cam gets you. Ouch.
I call poor form on the owner's part. You can't ruin a marriage just because someone didn't pay a $900 fine.
So apparently you can.
No, you chalk that up to the game.
Nah,
So
you
he's
gotta
the
be
game.
careful. People with spite, man.
Charge it to the game.
So here's how it went down. Mackie, the person who was trying to rent the place, refused to pay up, leading to what the lawsuit called an extortion attempt by Fuller, the host, who allegedly set up a fake email account with the sexually suggestive handle Sean69 at Outlook.com, then used it to send an email with the subject line, "Nice bag," to Mackie's wife at her place of work. The body of the email included a screenshot of the guest with another woman, and the accompanying message said, "I love your bag. Where'd you get it?" That was part of the audio of Mackie talking to the woman coming in the house.
I kind of appreciate the level of pettiness.
No.
This dude went, I mean,
That's
how do you find the person's wife's work email? That I have not been able to find from the story, but that's one of those Ron Burgundy. I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
No, that's evil.
It is evil, but
So bad.
Just
you
chalk
crossed
it
the
up
wrong
to the
host,
game.
apparently.
Chalk it up to the game. He's not gonna pay for it. Go to like Airbnb, be like, don't let this guy ever use Airbnb again. This is what he did. You chalk it up to the game. You put yourself on Airbnb, your house. You don't get to go break up a marriage.
This guy said, Vancouver Vortex line, I tried to sneak a dog into a no pet Airbnb. It cost me $359 for a $200 a night house. No damage, had to leave immediately.
Oh, brutal.
I got kicked out of one in Costa Rica.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
'Cause you gotta, I mean, did you
was
find
like-
another one the same night, or did
It-
you go to a hotel?
Why I said I would leave the next day, and we found a different place to stay. And I think it was only for the last night or two that we were there.
What was the reason? Like too many people, or were like too much noise?
We stayed at this.
Handbags?
We stayed at a place in Costa Rica, and
Tours?
they kept running out. My kids were there. So my kids and my girlfriend
You
at the
didn't
time.
answer the question.
It is legal in Costa Rica, by the way. They're waiting for you outside of the bars in case you're thinking about going down. Like they just stand on the street, and it's all on the up and up.
Purchase it right now.
There you go. And no, so we were staying in this really nice, it was a really nice house up on the hill. But they kept running out of water. Like there'd just be no water. And so like
Was it like well? something like
it was
that?
a tank.
Okay.
It was like a big tank, and they would like rainwater, and it kept running out. So we'd call and be like, "There's no water. We can't shower. You can't use the toilet. Nothing." And so the lady, her husband was gone, but the lady lived. It was a big like kind of mansion, and she lived in the bottom half of it, and we had like the top 2 floors. And this lady was she kept coming up to the house too. Like we went out to rent a car, and she showed up and like asked my kids if they wanted to play like games. And my kids are like, "No, leave." It was real weird. So we had this weird thing, and so we kept calling, being like, "There's no water. Like this is not okay. Like we can't."
Yeah,
it's,
we need
it's
this.
Costa Rica. It's 90 degrees. Like you can't. We
It's
need,
expected as part of the place to have
yes,
water.
and it wasn't cheap. So we kind of kept going back and forth on this, and eventually I got to the point where I think it was my girlfriend started yelling at the lady, like, "Quit coming up and bothering us, and get us water, or give us, we're gonna go find someplace else." And so it turned into like this kind of a bit of a yelling match, kind of back and forth, and then the husband,
Spicy.
yeah, then the husband messaged me and threatened me.
Oh, how nice.
And I forwarded that on to Airbnb and was like, "Just so you know, like your hosts are threatening me." He was threatening me with physical violence.
Did Airbnb do anything? Because it sounds like they often side with the hosts.
We left, and we got we got the 2 nights plus like an extra night
Okay.
back from Airbnb. And
So Airbnb did hear your complaint, was like, okay.
Yeah. So like I said, we got like a partial refund from it, and we found a different place to go. But yeah, it was it was like one of these like nightmare. We were there for like 4 nights, and the lady kept coming upstairs for like random reasons.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was really kind of.
It's inappropriate is what it is.
It was inappropriate. It was creepy, and like she when she came up to tell us that we needed to leave, she was like, and you keep leaving your kids alone. And then we're like, first off, why are you monitoring? And my kids were all teenagers.
Yeah.
Like
one, they're fine, and two, why are you watching?
My daughter was like 21 too, and I was like, this is weird. And so then we started wondering like where there are cameras. It was a real kind of odd situation. And then I enjoyed when the husband was threatening me because I had seen the photo of the husband, and I suggested to him that he should come and threaten me in person. I said, I think it would be hilarious if you decided to show up at this residence. He was somewhere else in Costa Rica doing something like a different property. And that never came to fruition. But yeah, I mean, there are nightmare stories. But like, we never got a fine or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, that's your marriage being ruined over a night. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you're up to nefarious things,
be careful. I mean, even if you're in the right, be careful.
That's the stupid tax. Sometimes you just got to pay, as someone said, you just got to pay the stupid tax.
Well, you need a fall guy. You need to have someone else bring them in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true, too. Although I would imagine at the point that he brought this person in, he wasn't thinking the host was going to end up kicking him out and have this dispute. So
100%.
Like,
but then you can deny and be like, well, you know, Steve, he's a bad dude. He's single. He's a little bit sketchy. That's Steve's fault. I would never do that.
Oh, Steve.
All right, we have one more scandalous story for you. Sex, drugs, and bullet casings in a Northern California library, but they will soldier on. They reopened today. We'll tell you the details next on The Fan.
What's your opinion?
It's thick, it's meaty.
Just about to wrap things up here in the club, but today a little bit of proof that you can't keep a good public institution down. The public library in Antioch, California, Contra Costa County, where I grew up, opposite side of the county where I grew up, but they shut down on Saturday and Sunday over the weekend when they would typically be open. In addition to President's Day, they've reopened today with heightened security, including armed private security, after a series of incidents that led them to close down. And when you read these incidents, it sounds more like a nightclub than it does a public library. Let's see. Listed off, you have drug use both inside the library and outside, as well as the selling of drugs inside and outside.
Makes sense.
In December, they went into a bathroom and found a large pool of blood in one of the stalls. Unsure how that got there. Bullet casings on the premises, as well as staff's cars being broken into and stolen from. And then the final straw was in February when they caught two people having sex inside one of the bathrooms. They removed them, told them not to, and then found the same couple having sex without any of their clothes on in one of the library's hallways later. Interesting.
Now, I have said multiple times that if you don't know, the library's popping. I'm telling you. The downtown Vancouver library, I used to drive by it a lot. When I was going to therapy, my therapist's office was down by the library, and I'd go in the morning. And the line outside of the library was thick to get in. There was a line of people waiting to get into the library, like 8 whenever it opened, 8 or 9. And I'm not here to pass judgment on any, but from what I saw in the line waiting to get in the library, bullet casings, sex, drug use, selling drugs, sounds about right. If I was driving by that library and I had a bingo card of what was going to go down with the group of people, again, not trying to judge, but I am. I'm not saying it in a negative way. None of those things would be a surprise to me. Let's just say, I don't think Will was waiting to get into the Vancouver Public Library at like 7:50 in the morning.
No.
But I do think to a certain group of people, and God bless them, I think the library provides them a safe haven to go. It's someplace warm. There's something to do. You can get on the internet. You can probably score drugs and sex.
Clearly.
It makes sense.
And I guess all libraries are supposed to be this way, but this one is supposed to be specifically kind of youth-centric, as it's a couple blocks away from both the elementary school and the middle school.
And libraries tend to be in downtowns, and, it makes sense.
So I guess part of the issue was that Contra Costa County, they basically just said, we're shutting down the library. And the city of Antioch said, wait, what? Why? They had not received a single complaint. And so I guess library officials complained to their supervisors who work for the county, and the county didn't kick it over to local law enforcement to do anything about it. So
the bullets would be a bit much for me.
Yeah.
The blood.
The blood. That's a little creepy. But if I was in the library and I saw someone, I saw someone tying one off, I'd be like, if I saw someone buying some blow, again, sex in the bathroom, I think I'd do a little peeksy there. I'd be like, what's happening there? Maybe just kind of take a quick
looky-loo.
Yeah, take a quick little look, see what's happening, give them a nod, maybe a fist bump, and then go about my business.
Peep and Pete.
I honestly thought this was going to be a different library because our family, when we road trip down to the Bay Area, there's a library at about the exact halfway point, and so it's a good place to get the kids and the dog out of the car, like let everyone stretch their legs, and like let our kid run around in the kids area of the library for a while. But we went to this library in Reading, needles all around it, stuff. I mean, like, not surprising. I think this is what this attracts now. It's just too bad because, I mean, the resources are pretty phenomenal for people who really want to use them, but it's also a place where there's not a lot of reprimand for activities like this.
I think, unfortunately, public places that are free and open, I think it kind of is, it's like, any park, Pioneer Courthouse Square, the library. I'm trying to think what else is just like anything that's just generally free to the public where you can come and go as you please. Beaches, bathrooms. It's not the best right now. We're struggling a little bit with those sorts of areas, and it does kind of suck because our tax money goes to pay for those things, and I think it'd be nice to be able to use those things. But I think at this point, most of the people, we've punted. We've punted on the, hey, do you want to go to the free public space? maybe not so much.
And then, Suk, I did want to circle back. I saw a text here, Vancouver Ford text line. You were talking about how hilarious it is for you to think about dictators doing like normal, mundane things.
Evil people doing normal things. If there was a show on Netflix, it would be my number one watch show.
This person tells us to save it for a slow day, but I got to include it before we get out of here. Multiple reports that Stalin was a big party boy, forcing peers to do pranks on each other, watching American movies, and even doing awful karaoke until 5 a.m. And he was also a DJ. Look it up, they say.
See, again, if you told me that there was footage of like Stalin
doing karaoke?
Well, no, like pull my finger. Like imagine like Joseph Stalin, who killed more people than Hitler.
Tossing a whoopee cushion under somebody at dinner?
Like Stalin's just walking around like pull my finger. And like Putin doing that. Like Putin doing Putin's doing D jokes. Like Putin's just like he's pulling a Larry David, like his balls are hanging out of the bottom of the shorts, and he's like, aha! It's like check